session. Thank you. One man is here. Everyone is all women here. So we have a really lovely topic, which is called Crafting Resilience, Weaving Communities, Arts, Traditional Crafts, Entrepreneurship, and Activism Through Women's Stories. A very poetic title, and we have three wonderful speakers, experts in their field. We will start with Altyn Kapalova, who is giving a talk about the role of art in the struggle for human rights in Central Asia and Woman, Life, Freedom, the renowned title. Altyn Kapalova is a research fellow at the UCA Cultural Heritage and Humanities Unit. She's also founder of Central Asia's Museum of Feminist and Queer Art, which promotes inclusivity and representation, providing space for underrepresented narratives within the region's cultural landscape. Altyn's anthropological research informs her own artistic vision, and she creates experimental works that seamlessly blend elements of art, science, and politics. The floor is yours, Altyn.
Спасибо. Всем здрасте. Сейчас моя презентация появится на экране. Да, я сегодня буду делать не очень академическую презентацию. Я больше буду говорить как кураторка и активистка. Так что можно очень расслабиться и наслаждаться прекрасными арт-работами художниц Центральной Азии. И презентацию я выстроила так, что я расскажу о каждой из центральноазиатских стран. Я вообще не претендую на полное покрытие, просто покажу какие-то знаковые работы. Их намного-намного больше, их сотни, у меня 15 минут. Кстати, Аниса, я могу попросить сказать мне через 10 минут, чтобы я начала закругляться? Вот, и потом во второй части презентации я немножко расскажу о музее фем и квир-искусства и о том, какие подходы мы используем в нашей работе. Куда я должна это наводить? На экран? Окей. Ой, простите. Я хочу начать с работы Асии Тулесовой. Это была такая арт-интервенция «От правды не убежишь». И я очень люблю эту работу. Она это сделала во время алматинского марафона. Я вообще не хочу обидеть бегунов, но сам факт, что она во время марафона со своими соратницами развернула такой плакат «От правды не убежишь». То есть ты можешь заботиться о своем здоровье, о состоянии там, физическом, ментальном, но если твоя страна проваливается в тоталитарный режим, твое здоровье тебе, ну, как бы... тело запертое в тюрьме. Ну, вот так это выглядело. И это идет суд над ней. Но это настолько нелепо, да, вот они разворачивают этот постер, плакат этот. Ну, в общем, да, она была наказана государством за свою арт-работу. Ой, это ж сюда надо. Вот следующая работа, которую я хочу показать, где-то в степи Сауле Сулейменовой. Сейчас идут все казахские художницы. У нее есть такая серия в целом про номадизм, про историю Казахстана. Она делает работы с очень таким фокусом на женщин. И это все сделано из использованных пластиковых пакетов. Вот, и у нее в эту же серию входит несколько крупных работ про голодомор 30-х ашаршылык в Казахстане. Это работа пары Елены и Виктора Воробьевых. Она называется «Винтаж» от слова «винтить». И она берет начало с их работы, которая была показана на Венецианской биеннале, про художников, как художники из плановой экономики советского периода не вписывались в капиталистическую экономику, было очень сложно. И они на Венецианской биеннале 5-го года показывали, ну, вот такую кровать, где художник лежит, но потом в связи с разными событиями вот ему пришлось встать. Вот это уже позже была сделана работа. Ой. Я не знаю, как это работает. А вот. Это так выглядело в экспозиции. Это Кандара, тоже казахская художница. Она много говорит, она своими работами говорит о дискуссии сочетания современного и традиционного, что это все прекрасно вместе может жить. Тоже у нее очень большая портреты казахских женщин. Про Таджикистан тоже хочу показать несколько работ. Это Манижа Абдулаева, и у нее тоже очень большая серия «Лютак», где вот она говорит о женских традициях, об отношении общества к женщинам, ограничениях, свободах. Это две разные художницы. Орзуш называется «Самокрутка». Она не имеет никакого отношения к религии. Это больше о правилах, которые создает для нас общество, и мы сами, и потом живем в каких-то коконах. И вторая работа «С меня хватит» Ирины Хаутовой, тоже душанбинская художница. Марифат Давлатова, но я долго не буду рассказывать, эту историю все знают, да, как ее просто преследовали, булили только за то, что она сделала выставку персональную, где были полуобнаженные женщины в традиционных одеждах. Вот, ну и про Манижу все знают, насколько она подняла вообще видимость вопросов миграции. Но моя любимая работа, ее песня «Город солнца», которая вообще о беженцах, о миграции, и они начинаются со слов «Что ты возьмешь с собой, если будешь знать, что не вернешься домой». Это у нее такой речитатив в начале, и только потом начинается песня. Вот про Туркменистан я обычно показываю эту работу. Это работа Георгия Мамедова. Она была тоже на Венецианской биеннале, и он просто сделал прямое включение туркменского государственного телевидения. И я когда пришла, и потом павильон показывали в Бишкеке, я когда пришла в музей, я честно думала, что это какой-то перформанс, потому что они все давали цветы Туркменбаши и целовали его руку, но оказалось, что это был день его рождения, и это был такой государственный перформанс. Вот они целуют руку. И я тоже общаюсь с туркменскими художницами, которые тоже говорят, хватит о нас говорить, как будто нас не существует, или как будто мы там ну, вообще без информации, это неправда. И вот мы пару лет назад делали персональную выставку Майи Келовой, она называет себя туркменом, грузинская художница, потому что сейчас живет в Грузии, и она делает очень хорошие проекты по идентичности, о вынужденной миграции, о женской идентичности, используя историю своей семьи. Это тоже вот ее проект. В истории узбекского и современности узбекского искусства я очень хотела подчеркнуть Ильхом театр с их потрясающими постановками на очень политические темы, Лолу певицу. Кто не видел, я очень рекомендую посмотреть этот клип. Она просто издевается над всей тоталитарной системой. Просто это очень крутой клип. Умида Ахмедова, фотографиня, которая просто задокументировала целый пласт истории Узбекистана последних десятилетий. У нее просто тысячи фотографий, и любая фотография у нее просто шедевр. Вот у нее есть такая серия, тоже она фотографировала такие громкие призывы государственные, ну вот как у нас во всех центральноазиатских странах любят, про там про великую нацию, про великое прошлое, будущее. И она это делала вот в таких местах, где люди просто выживают, там толкают тачки и так далее. Зере, кыргызская певица, тоже, мне кажется, многие знают. Вот она сделала в 2019 году в конце клип, который стал таким предсказанием. Потом это кадры из ее клипа. И потом в 2020, кажется, году много активисток были задержаны. Вот хочу показать реакцию. Это автопортрет Татьяны Зеленской. Это работа Карины Толмачевой, портрет Риты Красартовой. Работа художника Джума Гуна. Это работа Джилдызбековой. Она не была среди задержанных, но она так хорошо передала, потому что когда нас задержали, милиционеры такие: ну вот что вы получали, вот цветочки там. И она очень передала. То есть они хотели быть добрыми на самом деле, но выглядели очень нелепо. И я тоже Джилдыз говорила: ты вообще как это сделала? Тебя же не было там. Она говорит: ну как бы мы смотрели прямые включения и все такое. Сейчас. Это вот 2020 год, и этот портрет, он называется «Портрет кыргызской женщины», нарисовала художница украинская, когда была у нас в резиденции, вот на феминале. И хотела рассказать вот про работу Джазгуль Мадазимовой, которая вообще в феминале такая была очень большая выставка, посвященная экономической свободе женщин. И на эту выставку как кураторку меня вдохновила работа Джазгуль Мадазимовой, кыргызской художницы. Она посвящается 17 мигранткам, которые сгорели в Москве в типографии из-за того, что работодатели просто не соблюдали условия пожарной безопасности. И она использовала традиционные куклы Чи-Курчак, подожгла их, и это была такая инсталляция, где был запах, еще видео сопровождалось. И вот ее работа меня очень вдохновила. И я вот решила сделать эту выставку, посвященную памяти этих 17 женщин. Вот, и потом, ну, кто в Кыргызстане знает, что эта выставка была цензурирована министерством, и нас потом больше не пускали в музей. Вот, поэтому мы решили, что у нас будет свой музей. Вот, и мы работаем в разных направлениях: театр, документальные фильмы, музыка, детские книги, и там очень сильное внимание мы уделяем женским образом и говорим о том, что женщина может злиться, может быть в депрессии, может быть политически активна, может быть решительна, одинока и не ждать никакого, там принца или еще кого-то там, иметь хорошие или плохие отношения со своей мамой, быть голубой в розовом мире, вот, или иметь глаза разного цвета, строить свой радужный мир. Вот, и в конце хочу показать как пример. У нас много различных программ, но самое важное для нас проект Meet Women Artists, когда мы просто повышаем видимость художниц и боремся за публичные, за государственные пространства, потому что если вы посмотрите любой фестиваль сейчас, который проходит, или какую-то выставку, там женщин практически не будет, и вообще до сих пор, к сожалению, все музейные, галерейные пространства очень оккупированы мужчинами, художниками. Вот эта программа. Я хочу и вот одну только выставку покажу. Она началась, вот у меня есть такая арт-интервенция «Кызыл камчы сынсын», когда я вот с этим планшетом, который не смогла поднять, 8 марта просто стою в разных местах, и мне художницы начали высылать в поддержку работы, вот в том числе Ирина Хаутова. Эта работа сейчас в нашей коллекции. И мы сделали такую выставку в красных цветах «Аружан Джумабек из Алматы». Это моя работа о стигматизации месячных. Вот, когда все время говорят, что стыдно, и никому не стыдно за то, что у тысяч девочек нет доступа к гигиеническим вещам и к воде во время менструации в селах. И не только в селах, на самом деле. Вот. И работа Саши Филатовой, которая посвящена женщинам, которые сидят за убийство, за самозащиту, которые жили по 20 лет в семейном насилии, потом защитили себя, своих детей, и в итоге у нас нет закона, который бы судил их за самозащиту, они по полной получают за умышленное убийство. Работа Альбины Блиновой. Это моя работа, которая называется «Я бы все равно ее убил». Есть очень большое, хорошее исследование, которое так называется. Это цитата, то есть исследователи изучили очень много протоколов судебных заседаний, и там, конечно, такой вопрос не должен быть, в принципе, но есть вопрос, за что вы ее убили. И там ответы типа «суп был недостаточно горячий», вот всякое такое. И один мужчина сказал «я бы все равно ее убил». Он готовился целый год, там купил топор и все такое. И вот мы с моей партнеркой Джилды Станбекқызы сделали такой ковер. Он о том, что женщины столько вкладывают в семейный уют и в итоге умирают в своих домах, потому что по статистике около 80 убитых женщин убиты близкими мужчинами. Это официальная статистика. Вот. Это вот выставка, но не супер оптимистичный слайд, но хочу закончить свое выступление этим слайдом, потому что я очень верю вообще в силу искусства. Это не то, что мы делаем, мы оказываем прямую помощь, да, там, или там можем спасти, но это очень хороший адвокационный инструмент. Ну и в принципе, я думаю, что каждая художница должна все-таки быть вовлечена в политику и влиять своим искусством на улучшение жизни женщин и сообществ, детей. Вот, спасибо большое.
Thank you, Altyn. Wonderful presentation. The next is Elena Kolesova, PhD, University of Auckland, New Zealand, an associate professor of communications and media at the University of Central Asia. Her research interests lie at the intersection of cultural studies, cultural anthropology, mass popular culture, media studies, and history. And her current research projects include post-memory of the Urkun, historical memory, and mass popular culture in Central Asia. Her topic is crafting resilience, women entrepreneurs, aesthetics, and traditional creative practices in Kyrgyzstan.
Thank you very much for the introduction. And I changed slightly the title of the topic because when I worked on my project, I realized it's not crafting really, it's more accurately weaving the resilience. And the reason for me that the net appeared here, I will actually discuss it in my presentation. So the story or my involvement in this project started about 4 years ago when I first arrived to Kyrgyzstan, fresh from the boat, and the person who is sitting in this room, Nuria Barakanova, invited me to the exhibition of arts and crafts by local Kyrgyz women. And thank you. Yep. And there at this exhibition, I'm sorry, that's all good. Thank you. Sorry about that. And I'm just also trying to click the slides. Sorry, the slides don't move at the moment. So at this exhibition, I met the woman who is on this picture. Excellent. Thank you. Yes, it works. Gulmira Akhmatova. So she had a collection of garments which she created from the wool, sheep grown on at the fields of Kimin region, where her family had pastures for a long time and where her father was a shepherd. So this is actually students, our students at UCA last year at our festival, they modeling her garments. So that was my first really encounter with arts and crafts in Central Asia. And I was asking her questions about what she's doing, why she's doing it, and she quickly realized it's hard to get rid of me and invited me to go with her to her workshop, which is located at the outskirts of Bishkek. So we got in a car, went there, and knocked at actually the workshop is at the ground level of an apartment block. So she knocked at the door, and the door was opened by a young woman with a child in her hands, a baby in her hands. And Gulmira picked up, sort of my surprise, and said to me quietly, she said, well, this is a woman who actually looks after my workshop when I'm not here. And she simply needs space, safe space, because it's not safe for her to be in your own home. And at that point, I thought, well, actually, these networks which appear might create the web, safe web for the women who involved in this industry. And then I started to read about, nature and the net weaving exercise. Apparently, in the natural world, mostly female spiders involved in creating webs. And the purpose of webs is, well, to create a safe home for children, little spiders, to pray for food, bring food, and also as a communication links, communicative links with other spiders. So this is how nature works, really. And for me, this, analogy started to wave in my own mind when I started to explore and unpack, or probably better to say, to unpick threads in this network of creative industries. So then that happened 4 years ago. Sorry, it's something. So slides come. Yeah. So that happened 4 years ago, then it was COVID. Then in the last 2 years, I collected about 50 interviews with women working in creative industries in Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan. But my story today is about women involved mainly in Shirdak and Alakis, in Narin region of Kyrgyzstan, and a little bit in Kurak. So, sorry, it's somehow... It's probably my hands. It's just, slides are very slow. Anyway, so talking about creative industry or orange economy, so how to understand it? There is no agreed definition about what it is, but roughly speaking, creative industry includes or encompasses very different genres: architecture, design, performing arts, film, photography, fashion, crafts, music, and video games. And obviously people who engage in these industries, like have talents, they people who work in creative industries. In terms of, in terms of the world kind of numbers, international kind of, just disturbing really. Anyway, so the latest statistics tells us that it's about 6.2 employment in the world as for people who work in creative industries, and 3.1% of GDP, and roughly about 50 million involved in creative industries. Also, its statistics is very kind of inaccurate here. It's in reality, the numbers would be quite higher. And a lot of them actually women. We're talking about nearly half women involved in creative industries, and also younger people as well. So coming back to creative industry in Central Asia, so the numbers are, as you can see, so a lot of women involved, well, not a lot of women, a lot of people involved in fashion design and crafts, television, like media comes next, and then it is advertising, shows, and public events. And specifically in Kyrgyzstan, we're talking only about 1% of country's GDP comes from creative industries. and about 50,000 people involved. Also, realistically, I think the numbers are much higher, and this was confirmed by through my data collection. And highest numbers involved in arts, entertainment, and recreation sector. What is interesting, in 2022, Kyrgyz government came up with the concept of the development of creative industries, and it's 4-year, four-year plans, that's right. And the accent is made on younger generation who involved in media, different forms of creative industry involves media. And also it doesn't really provide much financial support. It allows sort of for some tax brackets, but basically, and one of the sort of ideas of this concept is to develop a national brand. Well, my argument is actually that women who were involved in arts and crafts in Kyrgyzstan started to develop national brands straight away after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So this is just a quick introduction. Coming back to my web metaphor, so I'm using the words of Clifford Geertz and, well, how he described cultures really. Believing that man is an animal suspended in webs of significance he himself has spun, I take culture to be those webs and the analysis of it to be therefore not on experimental science in search of law, but an interpretive one in search of meaning. And these words really guided me through my project. So I was collecting stories. I use oral history methodology, and I have about 59 stories of women who talk about their life. It's life stories, and in gender studies, as post-colonial studies, oral history is very favorable way of methodology because it allows to hear voices of those who don't have usually chance to tell their stories. And also it, well, it's empowering element to it as well. So here I embarked on my kind of way of interpreting stories which I was collecting. And again, inspired by this web metaphor, I constructed my own web based on thematic analysis of the stories and interviews. Here I have this craft women in the center as my spiders who created this actually amazing network. Because Shirdak itself is quite a collective, and it is a spider word. Networking involves, because not just a woman, it's all family members and neighbors often involved in making Shirdak. That brought to economic independence, which automatically brought to empowerment, economic and social. Women gained autonomy, agency, develop networks, starting at the village level, collectives, shops, events, spread to international events, international fairs. It also provides security, social welfare, because the country doesn't really have a strong social welfare, particularly when you go to the rural areas. And then also interesting, it creates matrilineal female link connection, because in patriarchal society, usually it's the male link, it's patrilineal. But here, women want to transfuse their knowledge and their business often to their daughters or their daughters-in-law, not to their sons. Right, so this is the web, which merged, as I said, they are based on the data. And here I just provide you with a few examples of the stories which appeared from these ladies. Again, this is mainly Naryn region, because I'm a Naryn person now. I work at UCA, which is in Naryn town. So I started close to home and collected data in Naryn, Kochkor, and Atbashi. So everything started really with the economic crisis. Early 90s, people struggled to find food. The economy collapsed. Plants and factories stopped working. Nothing worked. Social welfare didn't exist. People stopped receiving salary. We had to find a way to survive. So that was actually a desperation which brought these women to think outside of their square. Men were involved in public sphere before, so they lose their jobs, they got depressed, a lot turned to alcohol. Women had families, kids to feed, and they had to be creative. So another story, Rakiia Kapalova, also Kochkor village. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, I came to work to Altyn Coal. It's one of the first cooperatives emerged in Kochkor from desperation. I was a nurse, but we stopped receiving our salaries. It was extremely hard. Nothing worked. I had to find the way to feed the family. So that's the bottom line, early 90s and actually through 90s. This is another lady, Noreen, and her story. At first, 10 women creating net, right, joined our first cooperative. Many had lost their jobs, and we just brought together 25 soms each. Well, at that time and now we're talking about a few cents, right? So this is what they could contribute to start their business. We used the collected money to buy wool. In 1990s, it was very hard to find wool. Chinese businessmen were buying wool in bulk as it was much more profitable for producers. So networks again started to work, families like finding sources because we need wool to make this. Just imagine the irony. We produce excellent wool in Kyrgyzstan, but couldn't buy because our people had to sell it to the Chinese, right? So networks emerging. Again, what is interesting that it was actually outside sources. It was foreigners who came to Kyrgyzstan with NGOs, well, diplomats, media, they started to express interest in these traditional arts and crafts because and also they were prepared to pay money for it. Women were confirming that until sort of this time, they were not selling shidduch. It was something produced inside home, like, dowry. So when the son or daughter marry, you give it to them. But the things that you can actually monetize it appeared only from the necessity in early 90s. So foreigners came. It was just wonderful stories how women were carried this big shidduch, no car, to show them. And they loved it and said, well, I'll buy it, but can you make another 100 to 200? So this is business started to emerge. And networks started to emerge. And things which were privately made at home suddenly get recognition in a public space. So women moving this kind of enterprise from being something for home, domestic. Husbands, actually interesting. I was asking, well, what is the role of men here? They said, well, they didn't mind. They didn't mind because this is what's traditionally expected from women to do, crafts at home. And well, they didn't mind, they didn't help, they didn't support, but as soon as women started to make money, the situation started to change. Men started to help. And what is interesting, all these shidduch women, I call shidduch women because there are different categories in my data, they said like when men retired, because they're usually 60s, early 70s, they actually started to assist and help me. And I observed it because I went to the workshops and it was wonderful. So women organize everything and husband comes and help and assist. So this is also a little bit, it's not a reverse of gender roles. I think it's women use these traditional crafts and their gender roles to make it work for the benefits of themselves. And to move from the public, private sphere, home in the public arena to the international market, more or less. Sorry, I'm just going to next slide. And this is again, all the photographs mine and the women, obviously, the portraits which I made is mine. During the data collection. So this is interesting. Receiving the status of intangible cultural heritage from UNESCO helps craftswomen to feel their importance first as custodians of national heritage. Remember, the government a couple of years ago said, well, we need to make Kyrgyz cultural brand. Well, they were doing it in early 90s. Second, it's also helped a lot in marketing crafts products. Third, it also raised the value of arts and crafts for our politicians, and these people usually don't care about our culture. They care about their own careers. However, including our traditional arts and crafts on the UNESCO list helped to elevate its importance, elevate our traditional cultural heritage, and actually bring agency to women because they were empowered by that. Autonomy. So this is another thing, and this is a great story. Nazira Moldaleva, actually all women agreed to the photographs will be used, so I'm not violating any privacy issues here. It's all fine. So this is a lady who lives in the village next to our campus. And initially, I was working with my colleague, and we saw this blue container. It's attracted our attention, and we started to speculate, what can it be there? So I tried to talk to neighbors. They did, actually, nobody was there. So it's, I think, third attempt to go there. I talked to the children, and they gave me the phone number of their mother. And this container was full of beautiful crafts which this woman creates in a little workshop, very cold workshop next to this container. So I'll just come back to her a quote. So interview with her, and I conducted a couple of interviews, and most of the interview, when I asked her some questions, she was talking about her hardship and how she got there. And the story was actually absolutely horrendous. My interpreter, because she spoke Kyrgyz, she actually started to cry a few times. So we had to make a tea break and sort of reconcile and start it all over again. So from your interview, state doesn't help us. Often it is quite the opposite. Today, for example, I received a message from the government authorities asking to help our disabled. We usually help by buying food and give some to Czech, and this is what they produce there as well in this workshop. My dream is to expand our workshop to 20 places. I also need to make it warmer. Without heating, we can only work there for 6 months a year, as the rest is simply too cold. We went at the end of October, it was freezing. I experienced real hardship, and I know how to find a solution. I'll find the way. So, and this is what I'm saying, it's developing, you know, autonomy and emerging agency. Finishing up, yes. So matrilineal line is also very clearly emerging in the interviews. And this is the story of a woman from Naren again. She made a shirdak herself. Her daughter learned from the mother early days, but her daughter had her own style. It wasn't really a clear patterns, more sort of soft lines, not, yeah, she's more an artist. And she was saying, like, your mother criticized her initially, but then buyers, like customers, were coming and buying her daughter's shirdak, and then mother gave up and was feeling quite proud that the daughter actually made something right. This is Adbashi, ladies explaining me the pattern. I said, well, what does this pattern mean? And they just love to tell the story of their work and really love to talk, because it seems like you ask the question and they talk endlessly, because it's a chance for them to share everything what they went through. So preliminary conclusions. Developing traditional arts and crafts help Kyrgyz women reinvent themselves and challenge customary gender expectations, especially in rural regions. Through the emerging networks of mutual support, women are able to connect with each other, establishing a business web which extends to international markets. At the same time, they develop a safety net that provides social welfare and protection that doesn't exist much in their society, as I said, particularly in the rural areas. So following Clifford Geertz, humans create the webs of significance. Women are the net makers who create visible and invisible pathways from traditional shirdak and craft making in the private sphere to the public capitalist economy and empower themselves through this complex process. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Elena. Our next speaker is Bermet Borubaeva, an independent researcher and public policy analyst in urban environment, political scientist, curator, co-founder of Bishkek School of Contemporary Art and initiative Bishkek Smog. Bermet also co-runs the annual environmental festival called Trash, which opens problems of pollution and waste management. And Bermet's topic is resilient city, building urban environments, defense, women, communities in Kyrgyzstan. The floor.
Да, это спасибо большое. Очень интересные доклады. Мне очень
Thanks to
приятно,
everyone
что
who
меня
presented
пригласили
before me. I'm very pleased
потому что
to
мне
be a
очень тоже
participant of
хочется
this
добавить
wonderful session
к
because
нашей
I
сегодняшней
really
дискуссии.
have something to add from
Я
my side
хотела
to this
говорить именно
discussion.
про город,
Today I wanted to
как
talk about the
защищать
city,
город, как
about
женщины
the
у нас
ways to protect
защищают
the
город.
city, about how the
И,
ways women are
потому
protecting our
что, ну, как вы
cities,
знаете,
because as
сейчас
all of you know,
происходит очень большая
currently there are
урбанизация, то есть
new
50%,
cities
да, это
being
городское
built, the
население в
level
мире.
of
И
urbanization
по
is very
прогнозам
high.
это будет уже и
Almost half of the world
70%, да, то
population
есть,
is living in
а
the
город
cities,
это как раз
and
то, что
it
создает очень
is
много экологических
prognosed to
проблем,
exceed
потому что когда
70% in the
именно из-за
future, and
скопления такого
urbanization creates
большого
a lot of
людей
ecological
на квадратных
struggles
сантиметрах,
when
да, в
so
городе,
many
как
people are
раз-таки
crowded in cities,
все
then
экологические
all of
проблемы
the
очень
ecological issues start to emerge.
обостряются, да, и даже ну,
They start
создается из-за
escalating.
этого. Вот. Я являюсь...
I am
Ой, сори. Да, я по образованию политолог,
I'm a
но также
politologist,
я аналитик,
and in
но
addition to
также
that, I'm
я
also an
кураторка, и
analyst.
у нас есть
I'm
замечательная
also
Бишкекская школа
curator
современного искусства,
of
частью которой я являюсь.
the art
Также
school.
нас всего 8
We have
человек, и
wonderful
мы
Bishkek
вот
City Art
совместно с
School,
Тазар делаем, в
and
принципе,
together with
проекты, про
Tazar
которые бы я
Initiative,
хотела
we
поделиться.
make projects that I
Тазар —
would like
это
to
тоже
tell
две
you about. Tazar is
прекрасные
also a
девушки, Амирим
project
Турсалиева и Айнура
started by
Сагын,
two
которые
wonderful
создали
women.
сами
They
приложение по
created this
сортировке
wonderful
мусора,
website
и
to
также они проводят
sort
такие
waste, and they organize
образовательные
such
программы,
wonderful
вообще
educational
рассказать про
programs,
мусор, про
telling
управление отходами.
kids about
И
waste
вот мне очень
management.
нравится вот у них такой
And I really like
проект, это экопункт. И
this
вот
wonderful
туда можно
project
принести
that is called
вторсырье
EcoPoint,
и получить за
EcoCenter.
это
There
там
you can
карандаши,
bring
тетрадки. То есть
processed
это прям самое такое практичное, мне
recyclable
кажется, особенно в
waste,
селах.
and for that you
Такие
can
вообще
get
пункты должны быть
some
везде,
products that you
потому
need
что
for
они
your
как раз
houses.
таки
And I think
решают
that it is
проблему вот этих вот
a great solution in the
отходов, потому
village
что, к
areas,
сожалению, в
because it is
Кыргызстане
a great tool to solve the
это
problem
очень
of
большая
waste.
проблема
And
по
in
управлению
Kyrgyzstan, the
отходами.
waste management is a
Я пару
huge
слов
issue
скажу про мои
nowadays. I
предыдущие
would also like to
работы,
tell you
потому
about my
что
previous
да,
works,
каждый день мы едим,
because
и
every day we
еда, и
eat,
вообще
and food
то есть город на самом деле требует вообще колоссальных усилий. И вот я
requires a
делала
lot
такой
of
проект,
work.
когда я училась в
When
Москве.
I lived in Moscow, I made this
Вообще
research.
месяц я не использовала
For
ни
1 month, I
супермаркеты,
did not go
ни
to
кафе, то есть туда, где
supermarkets
мы
or
обычно берем
cafes,
еду.
the places where we usually
Я
grab our
месяц
food. I
искала
was looking
еду,
for
которую
food
могли выбросить, да, то есть не ликвид.
that could be
Это были какие-то
wasted,
специальные
something that
группы,
could be
это мне
thrown
отдавали
away.
друзья, то
These
есть
were
я
special groups.
практически не
This
покупала
was food
еду.
given by
И
my
вот
friends, and I did
писала
not
дневник
buy
вообще,
food
как я
at all.
выжила,
And I
потому что,
was
если
writing a
честно,
journal
был
of
очень
how
страшно
I
начать этот
survived, because
эксперимент. Я
it was very
готовилась
scary
где-то
to start this
полгода,
experiment. I was
но в
preparing
какой-то
myself
момент я
for
решилась, и
6
действительно
months, but then I
большой,
just
да, как у
decided
нас
to
все
try, and
происходит.
it opened a new
В
huge world
капиталистической
of how
системе,
everything
да,
is
специально на
organized
эти
in
продукты могут
capitalistic
добавлять
world,
200% от
how
стоимости.
this
И вообще
additional
30-40% в итоге нормальные
price
активы
is
выбрасывается,
being
да,
added
то есть
to the
и
normal
это
products and
ООН
how much
официальное, и это
normal
страшно,
food is
потому
being
что
thrown
чтобы
away. This is
произвести эту
official
еду, мы
statistics because in
затрачиваем
order to process
колоссальные
this food, we
технологические, человеческие,
spend a lot of human
природные ресурсы.
resources,
И
natural
вот другой
resources,
эксперимент был, я работала поваром
ecological
в
resources. And
московском
I also
кафе,
made
почти
another
год
experiment.
проработала,
I
и
was a
вот
cook
чтобы
at a
узнать вообще,
Moscow
как они
restaurant for almost a year. I wanted to find
выбрасываются,
out
да,
how
еда
they manage their
выбрасывается,
food
как вообще
waste,
люди из Центральной
how
Азии,
people from
да,
Central
мигранты
Asia,
трудовые
migrants,
живут,
labor
работают
migrants
там. То есть это просто
live and
уже
work there
роботы,
because
потому что
they are
график
becoming
такой, что может быть один
robots because
выходной
this
в
schedule that
месяц,
they have to work
ты
with
работаешь там по
is
15-18
terrible. They
часов
have to
иногда.
work
Ну, то есть
for
это невыносимые
6
условия
days a
труда.
week.
И
They
вот,
have to work for
да,
16,
за счет
17
этого
hours.
строится в целом
The
вся наша
labor conditions
продуктовость,
are
система в
very
городе.
difficult, and the food system is constructed of
И
these struggling
вот
people.
мы сделали такой комикс,
This is the comics that we
как раз вот
made.
он был представлен на
It was
Феминале.
also presented at Feminale together
Я
with
еда, то есть, знаете, да,
other
Яндекс еда, и вообще,
products.
ну, мы такую сделали, потому
And
что это
this
было
is a
посвящено
comic that is
курьеру,
called
который вот в
I Am
21 год
Food.
просто
It's a
умер
comic
от
about
сердечного
a
приступа, да, на работе.
food
Он был
carrier who
он
died from
на самом
heart
деле
arrest
здоровый
at
парень,
work.
но
He
вот
was from
из-за
Kyrgyzstan. Actually, he
переизбыток,
was
да,
in
вот в
good
этой
health, but
системе
because
питания.
of this pressure
И
in
вот
this food
через комиксы
system
мы рассказывали такие, да, истории
and the
именно
volume of work, he
заднего
died.
плана,
That's
да,
why
то
we
есть то, что
decided to tell
происходит на кухне,
about the
буквально.
backstage of the
И
kitchens,
здесь
about food
получается,
production and
ну, как бы
delivery.
это история о невидимых историях
This
мигрантов, потому
is
что в
a
России, ну,
story
как бы
of
к людям
invisible
из там,
labor
Центральной Азии могут
migrants, because
относиться не
in
как
Russia,
к
people
людям,
from
а как
Central
к
Asia
функции, да.
are not people, they are
И
more of a
мы
function.
старались вот
That's why we
показать
decided
человеческие
to
истории.
show
И то, что
human stories
зачастую люди приезжают,
and
чтобы
how
просто
often people
прокормить семьи и так
usually
далее.
come to Russia
Вот.
to feed their
И,
families.
ну, конечно, я
And of
оттолкнусь от
course,
основной проблемы
I will
загрязнения воздуха в Бишкеке.
start from the main issue here, the air
Кто из
pollution
Бишкека,
in
наверное, знает,
Bishkek.
как
I
сложно,
think
да,
that
зимой, но
those
на
of you
самом
who are
деле
from
смог
Bishkek know how difficult it is
круглогодично, да,
to
летом он
live in
может,
Bishkek during winter
это
time,
тоже
but
загрязнение,
actually this issue is annual.
это химический смог,
We
потому
have
что все
chemical
вредные
smoke
выхлопы
that
при
is
нагревании,
actually
они
harmful
еще
during this
становятся
summertime and
более
during
вредными. И
the
здесь,
hot
ну,
period
как
when
бы
these
мы просто, ну, то есть травимся
chemicals
всеми
are being
выхлопами, которые есть в
warmed up,
городе.
then we just
Есть разные
get
загрязнители.
poisoned.
И вот
There are
когда эта проблема стала очевидной,
different chemicals that
когда я
are poisoning
приехала, на
our
самом деле, на
citizens. And
2
when I
месяца
came
в
to
Бишкек, вот на
Bishkek for
Феминале,
2 months in 2019 to
конференцию,
visit Feminale, to visit the
выставку
conference
и мы решили провести
at
такой
Synergy, we
флешмоб,
decided to
акцию.
organize a
И
flash mob,
получается,
an
что
action,
акции тогда
because turns out that
еще тогда
at that
пытались
time we
запрещать,
had
но
an
мы вот сделали такую
opportunity
молчаливую акцию протеста
to
и попросили
show
написать
our
на
political
масках,
will,
да, свои
and we called
протестные
people to
высказывания.
write
Потом
their
на
protest
самом деле
statements on
потом
their
4
masks.
акции провели.
And after
И
that, we have organized
начали снимать фильм про
4
смог,
more
и я, в
campaigns.
общем,
Then we
так и
started
осталась
making
в
a film
Бишкеке уже.
about smog. Then I
А,
just stayed in Bishkek.
Это вторая акция была
The
напротив парламента,
second
также
action
выставка,
was in front of our White
потому что очень
House,
много людей,
in front of the parliament. We
художники
had an
говорили про эту
exhibition because a
тему,
lot
и
of
мне хотелось это
artists,
все
a lot of
не
people were
увидеть, а
talking
вот
about
выстроить напротив
this issue. And
парламента,
I wanted
да,
not
потому
only
что
to see it
загрязнение
online, but
воздуха,
see
загрязнение
it in
окружающей
front
среды
of
это не
the White
какое-то
House. Because air
природное,
pollution, pollution of the nature is
это
not something
конкретные
that
политические действия,
is
которые
bothering only people
государство и
in
соответствующие службы, они должны
ecological
решать.
sphere,
Поэтому
but
мне хотелось
this is
именно эту
problem of
проблему
people
поднять
that
на
needs to be
политический
solved by
уровень,
the
а
government.
не
That's
как
why
до
I wanted
этого,
to raise this
до
issue at the
того
political
момента было
level.
на конференциях, как мы сейчас
Because before we were
обсуждаем. То есть
discussing it only at the conferences, just like we're
политическое
doing
измерение для
right
таких
now, because
важных проблем это
political
очень важно, да,
dimension
потому
for
что
such one
кто
important issues
принимает
is very
решения, да, то есть
important
в
because
основном же страдают
we
кто?
need to think
Женщины,
about
дети,
decision makers. Usually people who are vulnerable are people
кто
of
принимает решения, да? То есть это в основном
older
мужчины,
ages
которые
people
просто зарабатывают деньги. На
who
тот
are
момент
more vulnerable, like
председателем
women and
городского
children,
химеша
and
был
usually men
сын
make
угольного
profit
магната, да, и как
because
бы
at that time
как они
one
могут
of the
говорить
heads
про
of Kyrgyz
энергоэффективность, про
municipality was
сокращение
the
угля и
son of
про то, что
their
наше здоровье
rich
было
coal
лучше, если
miner.
у них бизнес, да,
And we're
связанный с
talking
углем.
about our health, and they're talking about their money
Поэтому
that is
всегда хочется
related to
отметить,
coal
что за
mining. That's why
какими-то
I will always
экологическими
want to
вопросами стоят
highlight that
экономические
behind the
интересы.
ecological issues
И
there
мы
is
как бы
economical
постараемся
interest,
на
and we
политическом уровне
always
изменить
try
этот
to
баланс.
talk at the political level and
Вот,
change
кому
the
интересно,
balance of
ну
power.
да, то есть
And these are some
это на
pictures
самом
of our
деле
city.
всегда говорилось, да,
We
даже
have
вот мы нашли
always
очень много
talked
архивных
about it.
материалов, где
We
говорилось
found
в
a lot
советское
of
время про
archive
угрозу
materials
смога.
during Soviet
Но
times.
как это
We had
сейчас
articles
происходит,
about the
это,
threat
ну,
of
как
smoke,
бы,
but
если вы
now
знаете, это первые места в рейтингах в
we
мире,
are
да,
almost number
первые
one
места
according to the
по
air
уровню сухого
contamination.
воздуха. И вот кому интересно, есть сайт
We
или
have
фильм «Бишкек Смог», там
official
27
movie
минут
and
очень подробно
website
говорится про эту
for
проблему.
27 movies,
Ну
for
вот
27
и
minutes we
там
were talking
на
about the
этих
issue of
протестах,
polluted air
вот.
in Bishkek.
И хочется сказать, что мы еще
And we
давно,
really would like
в
to
2015 году начали
say
такой
that
проект
we have
«Трэш-фестиваль»,
started
чтобы
our
вообще
festival
как
that
бы
is called
говорить,
Trash
как
Festival,
искусство может влиять, да, на проблемы.
because we were talking about
Это
art
работа Димы
affecting
Петровского
issues
из
in our
Доксы.
city.
«Дайте ходу
This
пароходу». Мы
is
сделали первый
a work that is
трэш-фестиваль на
called
Ошском рынке.
«Дайте
И вот
ходу
здесь, где вот
пароходу»,
стрелочка, там
let
была на
the
самом деле
ships
огромная
go.
гора мусора.
Because
Это
there
река
was a
Аларча,
huge
которую никто не
pile
хотел
of
убирать,
trash
потому что
that
это как
was
бы
not
река
cleaned
между
by
двух
anyone. It
районов.
was Alarcha
И
River
в день
that
фестиваля там просто несколько
played
тонн в
among
итоге
two
МЧС
districts,
вывезли
and
мусора.
during the
Для
festival,
нас это было
Ministry
вообще
of
просто
Emergency
реально,
came
как
and
мы вот
they took,
вроде как бы,
they
ну,
cleaned
мы
2 trucks of
в
waste
принципе,
from
да,
this
делали
river.
фестиваль
Because we were
искусства,
organizing
но
art
получилось
festival
так, что мы
actually,
прям
but
активно
in fact
влияли
we were
на городские
actively
проблемы,
affecting
и
city
это стало для нас
problems.
вот
And it became
стимулом, с одной стороны,
a
но и
stimulus
нашей
for us.
методологии, то
It
есть
was our
именно
methodology.
мы этот экологический фестиваль сейчас проводим ежегодно, и он
We're
как раз
organizing this ecological
не
festival
только
each year, and
рассказывает
it's not only telling
про
about the
городские проблемы, но
issues
и
that we
как бы
have in our
решает.
city, but also solves them.
Вот это про дефорестацию второй
This
мы
is
делали
a
возле
festival about
музея.
deforestation,
Вот, ну и с большим перерывом мы провели
and with a big
третий
gap, we have
трэш-фестиваль.
organized the third trash festival
Вот в 2022 году.
in
И тут
2022.
уже как раз собралось все наши знания, потому
And
что, ну, конечно, в
we
начале
had
это было
to
очень такое,
gather all of our knowledge here, because in the very
ну,
beginning,
студенческие,
we
конечно,
were
работы.
just students.
Ну вот, я не знаю, кто-то знает, что это?
Do you know what this is?
Да, вот
Yes,
полигон,
it's our
и
landfill,
вот это озеро Фильтрата. То есть,
and this is Filtrata Lake.
то есть это фильтрат,
So this is
который
the
вытекает. То
leakage
есть это не
from the
какая-то там
waste.
пруд или что-то, да,
It's
это
not a
вот вся
pond.
жижа,
This
которая
is
стекает
just
с мусорного
the
полигона,
leakage of
смешиваясь
the
со всем,
liquid
что там лежит.
that is coming
И
from
это
the
на самом деле было
wasteland.
страшно, да, то есть вот
And
когда
it's
я
actually
провела вот
scary,
этот акции «Бишкек
because
Смог»,
when I
мы
started this campaign,
познакомились
Bishkek
с
Smoke,
Владом
I have met
Ушаковым, и вот он меня привез
Vlad
на
Ushakov,
мусорный
who
полигон.
brought me to
И
this
так как, получается, есть
landfill.
несколько загрязнителей, да, то есть есть этот
There are
уголь,
several
да, который
polluters. There's coal
топится с
that
отходами
is being
другими,
burned
есть
with
транспорт,
other
про который мы еще
waste
поговорим, есть вот
types. We also have
мусорный
transport as a
полигон,
sort of
да,
pollution,
который
and we
там
also have landfill
круглогодично дымил,
that
при том, что наше
is
государство
burning every
выделяло
day,
23 миллиона евро
12
на
months a week. And
рекультивацию
the government
полигона.
has
И за
received
10 лет,
23,000
получается, ничего
euro,
не произошло.
million euros
И вот,
to
да, на
reconstruct this landfill,
трэш-фестиваль мы
and
как
nothing has
раз-таки
changed in 10 years.
поднимали
And at the
вопрос
trash festival, we talked about it.
этого, да, то есть есть проблема в том, что у нас
The
на
issue
самом деле, ну, как
is
бы
that
в основном очень много свалок в
we
Кыргызстане,
have a lot of
к
landfills.
сожалению,
We have a
очень
lot
много
of dumps.
личинных свалок.
In Kyrgyzstan, we have a lot
И
of
вот, как я уже сказала, в областях практически
dumps
не
in the
ведется
regions and
работа по
in the oblast,
современному
usually
управлению отходами. Единственное,
nobody
на самом деле,
thinks about
Ош, но это все-таки
modern
город, да, а
waste
вот
management.
за
Maybe just in Osh, but it's the
в
second
других
largest city.
городах областных
But
это
other
просто яма,
cities
где
in
ну,
the
как бы
regions,
все
they
отходы
usually do not
сваливаются. Вот мы были в Баткене, и
manage
это
their
просто
waste.
даже
And
не
we went
яма,
to
это просто в ущелье
Batken,
свозится
and
весь
they just
мусор, и
bring
как бы он
all of
там
their waste
ну,
to
хранится. Вот. И для
Gorge.
третьего
And
трэш-фестиваля
for the
мы вот
third
сделали
trash
такой
festival, we
экотур, который
organized
начинался
an
на
eco tour
полигоне,
that
и
started
вот
at the
там
landfill,
есть рядом
and
водохранилище, вот
near
так
that
объезжал
there
вокруг
is
водохранилища,
a
и
water
мы заканчивали
reservoir, and we have
проект в
visited
Алтын-Казыке.
water
То есть
reservoir
это
and then went to Altyn Kapalova.
как это выглядит ну,
This is how it
на
looks.
самом полигоне, да, то есть это
This is the landfill
постоянно
itself.
выделяющийся газ метан.
Methane is always being
Если вы там
produced.
почистили
If
картошку,
you have
морковку, вся
cleaned your
органика попадает на
potato
полигон, не
or
разделяется,
carrot, all of
и
the organic waste is going to
через
the landfill.
естественные
And after
химические и
several
биологические процессы
days,
начинает
because
появляться
of
газ,
chemical,
да, свалочный
biological
газ, и все
processes,
это
the
воспламеняется.
methane,
То есть
the
это на
landfill
самом деле
gas is
кошмар.
produced, and
И
everything
как вот
starts
в
to burn,
21
and
веке мы
it's
до сих пор,
terrible.
да,
And
ну, как
in
бы,
the 21st century,
делаем
we
вот
still
это, ну,
are doing
это как
this, and
раз-таки
it's
тоже говорит об экономических
something
интересах,
that
потому что там
talks, something that
прям ну,
highlights the
мусорная
economical
мафия, да,
interest,
как бы,
because this waste mafia
которая это
also
все
has some
ну, также
interest.
получала прибыль, да, и
They would get
параллельно
income
там есть
from
вот такие
these
красивые
issues.
места. То есть мы
At the
там
same
нашли
time, there
такое
are
место,
beautiful places
которое
like this. We found
мы арендовали дом и сделали там
a
вот
house and rented
библиотеку
it. We made a library out of it,
спасенных книг, как мы ее называем.
of
Там
saved
также прошла
books.
выставка.
We also had an exhibition
И
there.
вот так вот выглядел наш
This is
магазинчик
how our shop
в
looked
начале. И мы,
in the very
да,
beginning.
почти заканчиваю.
I'm almost
Вот,
done.
очень коротко,
I
что
would also like to
мы
shortly tell
также
you about
четвертый трэш-фестиваль был посвящен
the fourth
загрязнению
trash
реки,
festival,
и мы с
where we talked about
Аларчинского
the
национального парка проехали вдоль
Alarcha
реки
River
до как
and
раз-таки
its
мусорного
pollution.
полигона. То есть это вот
And we
показывает
also had an eco tour starting
физически,
from
да, как
Alarcha
бы
Gorge to
какая есть проблема, когда ты
the
в
landfill, and
очень
we wanted
красивом
to
месте
physically
находишься, и
show
потом
the
заканчиваешь это
contrast
на мусорном полигоне. У нас
from the
были
very beautiful place to
художники
the very
из
scary
Штатов,
place. We
которые
had
проводили
artists
с
from the
сообществами
US that
мастер-классы,
organized
да, то есть вот мы
workshops
делаем
with the
с детьми,
communities.
да,
So here
мастер-классы,
we
и вот
are making
несколько
a
метров
workshop, and
от
a few
нас
meters
вот это
away
вот
from us, this is
мусорный
what we
полигон.
have.
И в прошлом году мы просто вообще очень
And
огромный
last year,
фестиваль
we
провели.
organized a huge
Это
festival,
вы можете тоже
actually.
посмотреть в наших
You can
сетях.
see it from
Сейчас
our
я
social media
самое
as well.
главное, что там было,
And the
это
main
вот
thing is that
сам полигон. На самом деле в
the
прошлом году
landfill
засыпали
itself, it
полностью
was covered
глиной,
with
и он сейчас не так дымит,
ground,
хотя,
and
конечно,
now
есть
it's
эмиссии,
not
но это была победа, поэтому мы
burning.
даже вот открыли музей
Sometimes it
мусора на
might
полигоне,
emit still, but still it was a huge
который
victory. We have
вы
opened a
можете посмотреть.
museum
И
of
вот
landfill. You can
отдельно
see
сделали исследование про швейные отходы,
our
где
research about
50-80 тонн в день
factory
швейных
waste,
отходов заходит на полигон.
because
Вот, и
about
поэтому мы
50-80
развиваем с
tons
сообществами
of
женщин, там такой как кооператив,
waste
да,
from
вот
sewing
производим
factories
разные
is being brought to landfills. That's why we produce
дизайнерские штуки про это,
designer
и
stuff
выпустили
together
книгу
with these women, and we
про,
have
вот могу
made
так
a
передать,
book. I
«Сверкающая гора», которая
can
тоже
tell you
говорит,
about it. I can
рассказывает
show
про
you the book
проблему
itself,
швейных
that is
отходов, и
called
которую написала Altyn
Shining
Kapalova,
Mountain, and this
и
book was written
иллюстрации
by
сделала
Altyn
Чулпона
Kapalova. The
Ламанова.
book was
В общем,
illustrated
это
by
также
Cholpona Lamanova.
доступно будет в формате
The
анимации
book
и
is also going
театра.
to be
Мы
available as
показываем
animation, and
детские
in
спектакли.
theaters we
Это вот в этом
organize
году мы в Баткене его презентовали.
shows for the kids. We
И
have presented it in
последнее,
Batken this year,
да.
and
Также все это в зинах вы можете
you can
почитать,
also see it in
посмотреть. Вот, и в
the
этом
zines
году мы
on our
делали очень большую
websites.
работу по
This year we
троллейбусам, да,
also
которые
made
наша мэрия
great
хочет
work
забрать. Это
in the
сейчас,
trolleybuses
23 октября у нас будет суд,
that the mayor's office
вот,
wants to take away
поэтому
from us.
очень,
And soon we're
очень
going to
большая
have a
просьба,
court
да,
hearing
всех
on the
поддерживать,
20th
потому
of
что это тоже
October,
то, что
and would
дает нам
really like
чистый
to ask you
воздух,
for your
и
support,
то, что
because
наша
these trolleybuses are giving
мэрия
us
просто
clean years,
пытается
and mayor's office
забрать.
just want to steal it from us.
Могу еще потом, да, можете это все подробно посмотреть в наших
You can
соцсетях.
just look at
Спасибо
everything
большое
in
за
detail in
внимание.
our social media. Thank you very much.
Wow, these were great presentations. Thank you so much. I just want, I think we are running short of time. I just want to ask, give the audience a chance to ask questions. If you have maybe 2 questions, do we have time for that? For 2 questions? Yeah, is it okay? Yeah, okay, great. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah. Okay. I just yeah, Bermet and Altyn, I have a question to you, to both of you. So within the crisis of democracies and environmental challenges that we have, how do you see that art activism can transfer the and bridge the gap between the broad audience and art circles, and within the art anti-elitist approach to art as well?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's why actually what my project, as you can see, it's very political, because I think it's a political issues, gender inequality, environmental crisis. So it's connected with the political decisions, and who actually makes these political decisions. That's why through art we do influence. That's why we work with communities and government. And that's why actually I decided this year to also to participate in elections, because I think it's important that our voices can be not only those who are like asking or protesting, but also to make decisions. And yeah, that's because I think also representation of women in a political landscape, it's also very important. And you can, for example, now I can like, yeah, spend my own money to find lawyers that will make to consult the decision about trolleybuses. But I think that actually it should be in a decision-making process when actually defending interest of the woman first, and also about our health issues, about environment. But and now we have very big gap with this, and also about democracy. For sure, we have this shrinking civic space, and we have a lot of new laws that actually limit our activities. And for example, I was didn't allow to go into this session of the city council about trolleybuses, and they even brought me to police office, and another woman who was just saw it, and it's just like very narrow questions, like just transport questions that actually showing us that we live in a very authoritarian state, that you even cannot have any voice in the political agenda. So that's why I think, yeah, it's very important. Thank you.
Altyn, and you had a lot of artists from different countries who were in danger because of their activism. And some of them, I know they stopped being that active. How do you think we can bridge this gap and become closer to raise the awareness of the public about these issues through art?
Да, и я думаю, что на самом деле мы многие
I
очень
think
вовлечены, мы же
that
боимся
a lot
быть
of people
политически
are
активными,
involved in
но
these
даже есть,
campaigns.
я знаю,
We
в этой
are scared
комнате
to
были
be
женщины, которые
politically active.
приходили на наши
I
выставки,
know some
это
women
уже
in
на
this
самом
room
деле политический
actually
акт,
participated
поэтому я
our
думаю,
events, and I
что
think
все, ну, все идет как
that
идет, и каждая
everything goes
делает
like it
вклад, который
goes,
может. Мы не
and
можем друг
everyone
друга шеймить за то, что
contributes.
мы больше или меньше
We
активны.
cannot shame each other
Поэтому,
that
ну, мне
someone is
кажется, все
more active and others
идет
are less.
хорошо,
I think everything
насколько
goes
это
well,
возможно.
how it could
И я
be.
думаю, что я больше не буду
And I
говорить. Я
think I
вначале
won't
забыла
speak
поблагодарить
at the
переводчиц и техническую
beginning. I
специалистку, и
forgot
Гулю,
to
и
thank
Анису.
translators,
Спасибо.
technical specialists, and
Thank you.
Anisa. Thank you.
Yeah, just Elena, one question to you, maybe then we can wrap it up. With contemporary art, we can see that there is also a lot of Western influence on the forms of protest, and of course, it's blended with current forms of resilience. But crafts is quite a long-term. Has a long-term history of resilience in terms of just making it and expressing our voices. So I wonder what is your consideration of the post-colonial aspect of the combination of tradition and innovation in arts, which is happening often right now with crafts becoming more pale because we want to please the Western audiences and so on.
Thank you very much. Excellent question. And I have been thinking about it, as you know. So, well, first of all, I think in terms of, because during the Soviet era, it was, well, one of the things, you know, how you control the society is through mass popular culture, right? And my understanding is that sort of in the Soviet era, this traditional arts and crafts, well, talking about shirdak alakis, they were not really cool items. They were not really mass culture, because mass culture would be something imported from, you know, Turkey or China, often artificially, like synthetic, right? But this was trendy. So the fact that after the independence, oh, sorry, not after the independence, after the Soviet Union collapsed and independent period started, women kind of referred back to these crafts and elevated them, made them sort of capitalize them in a way. This is a good thing, right? So it's somehow become cool and trendy. But you're absolutely right that it probably became cool and trendy more because of this Western influences, Western gaze. So it's again, it's, you know, like Westerners wanted a particular style and particular colors. And this started sort of to influence what women will produce again on the market. But my sort of understanding, because I'm not the art historian, looking at the older shirdak, for example, and patterns and colors, they were much more subtle. So they have been probably more in taste like Western taste than the products which started to produce in mass, because they started to use like chemical paints, chemicals to bright colors from again China, Turkey, different colors. So I think these relations and post-colonial kind of development is very complex. I don't know the clear answer to it. I'm still thinking about it. But I think it's both tendencies. It's becoming decolonized by producing them and making it more popular, but it's influencing from the West, Westerners who want to buy it, but they want particular style, particular colors. So it's both, actually. It's colonization, decolonization happens at the same time for me, and I need to think about it more and appreciate actually your question and any feedback. Thank you.
Well, I think we can't deny that the word decolonization still has the word colonization in it. So it's probably just, but to wrap this up, this table proved that the gender identities is a huge topic, and the resilience as well. What is resilience? What is resilience that we have taken from the Western understanding of resilience, and what's local resilience? So I hope that we will continue this discussion, and thank you for your amazing, great work, very inspiring. And yeah, have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, the photo.
Ладно. Да. Здравствуйте, уважаемые участники сегодняшней конференции. Позвольте в первую очередь поздравить вас с 10-летним юбилеем данной конференции, всех участников и организаторов. Данную сессию модерирую я, меня зовут Зalkar Kamalov, я являюсь региональным менеджером программы горячего питания для образования Мерсико, Кыргызстан. Хотел бы дать небольшую информацию в целом вообще по горячему питанию, как это проходит. У нас здесь как раз представители и наши надежные партнеры со стороны ВПП ООН, WFP. Возможно, у них есть тоже кое-какая информация, которой они хотели бы поделиться. Наша программа по горячему питанию действует уже начиная с 2012 года, и за это время было уже поддержано более 900 школ в Кыргызской республике. И в соответствии с этим мы всячески поддерживаем в целом вот эту тенденцию для того, чтобы горячее питание улучшало и грамотность, и посещаемость в школах. И это неоднократно доказывает тем, что был отдельно принят в 2019 году закон о горячем питании, который плавно сейчас перешел и вошел в закон об образовании, где обязательно горячее питание является неотъемлемой частью в целом образовательного процесса. И хотел бы отметить то, что в этом году были очень хорошие достижения в плане увеличения бюджета, который предоставляется со стороны государства. Если раньше на одну порцию, получается, на одного ребенка приходилось 7 сомов, сейчас этот бюджет увеличился до 14 сомов. И мы всячески надеемся, что эта тенденция пойдет на рост, и мы в конечном счете достигнем той нашей цели, когда за порцию будет 22 сома на одного ребенка. В целом у меня вот такая небольшая информация. Возможно, мои коллеги из WFP тоже могут что-то добавить, так как они тоже делают огромную работу, поддерживают в этом плане. У них сейчас как раз очень большая программа открылась. Кто-то из WFP хотите? Айджан, Ракия? Нет, да, ну тогда давайте, да, продолжим. Давайте перейдем непосредственно уже тогда к сессиям. Мы чуть-чуть задержались, поэтому очень бы попросил вас, и особенно и выступающих, и на сессии вопросов и ответов держать регламент. В соответствии с этим у нас вот получается, первый доклад, он очень большой, поэтому на него 30 минут, потом по 15 минут. А на сессию вопросов и ответов, наверное, по 5 минут. И хотел с вами сразу же здесь как бы утвердить вот этот наш регламент. Вы как хотите, вопросы и ответы уже после всех докладов или после каждого доклада? После всех, да, тогда? Все, тогда решили. Давайте тогда закончим полностью все сессии и послушаем всех докладчиков. Тогда первое слово я предоставляю Айджан Дулетовой и Ракие Абдурасуловой. У них доклад по устойчивости школьного питания, программ школьного питания в Кыргызской республике. Презентация на английском языке, да, ну, а там язык уже вы тогда сами. Спасибо. 30 минут.
Thank you, Zalkar. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sajjad. I'm from Mercy Corps, and today with my colleague from WFP, Rakiia, we'll present the findings from our study, our joint study on the sustainability of school feeding program in Kyrgyzstan. So to start, we initiated the study in June 2023, and this presentation outlines the findings as of December of 2023. This study came out of our support of state school from more than a decade, right, together. And this period when the study was implemented was marked by several events. For example, adoption of new law on education in Kyrgyzstan, increase in the budgetary allocation from 7 soms per child to 14 soms. Also, there was some changes in administrative division across the country, and due to the border conflict, the Batken region got the special status of that. So all of these, they had various implications on the study implementation and the findings. The goal of the study was to evaluate the sustainability of school feeding program across all schools which we supported in the Kyrgyz Republic. We wanted to identify success factors and barriers and to put them all in a nice strategic document for the government stakeholders, right? So we used a mixed method approach to evaluate both quantitative and qualitative data to gain more like detailed comparison of schools across different domains of the study. In the study we covered both MGD schools, footwear education program from 2017 to 2021. So overall 100 schools and also 100 schools from the WFP program, supported from 2013 to 2023. I want to note here that the study did not compare two schools, like two programs, because by the design of the programs, we support schools differently. So this was like not appropriate to compare them. But the field results and all the findings we got from the study were both added to the national strategic programmatic document. And in addition, I want to add that there was a control group of 14 schools that did not receive any support from the donor organizations on the school meal program. Sorry. So sorry, the data was collected from desk review of the all available information from statistical data, from programmatic documents, and all the available pool of peer studies. Thank you everyone for contributing in this field. And also a field study was conducted, as I mentioned, in those 200 schools of both programs, where we used a structured survey of school principals, kitchen staff workers, teachers. Also, we conducted in-depth interviews with the main stakeholders, including state ones, and conducted focus group discussions with parents. And another focus was on school infrastructure observations, which also had interesting findings. And since the design and the purpose of the study was like to make a legislative document for the state, we also covered a lot of legislative reviews. Slide. So here is the sampling of MGD program schools, MGD 17 program by region and groups. Here I want to and explain you the difference between grouping. So the first group are the schools who improved their hot meals after the graduation from the program. This second group covers the schools which continue to provide the hot meals as they were done under the program. And the third group summarizes the schools that have ceased or reduced their hot meal program after the graduation for various reasons. And this is the country region representative sample, 50-50 for South and Northern regions. So, and I can go to the field study results. Rakiia, over to you.
Да-да-да, извиняюсь. Я давно не была на конференциях, забыла, как включить этот микрофон. Good afternoon, dear colleagues, dear participants of this conference. So I will continue our presentation with the findings, with specific focus on schools supported by World Food Program. But before I start, I move to the findings. I would like to make a small remark on sustainability. Myself, I studied sustainability in 2010 and 12. And then where the focus was intersection between social justice, economic development, and health sectors. But since 2012, I have been working in development area. And then the longer I work, the more I am convinced that this is something, it looks like utopia that we could achieve as well. if we wanted to be honest ourselves. So, but when we when we see sustainability in a narrow domains, in a narrow context, like for example, in intersection of, for example, conflict and the development to sustain peace, or for example, in our context is when we consider sustainability in intersection of nutrition and education, we could see some evidences which demonstrate sustainability. So I would kind of ask you perceive and consider sustainability in our presentation as this kind of findings in this intersection of two domains, nutrition and education. So regarding the findings, so as you see, one of the key findings of this study was that communities, beneficiaries, and stakeholders all recognized the importance of school meal, hot meals, and also they acknowledged the impact of these school meals on children's education as well as their attendance. And as you might see, then the schools, the proportion of schools who launched but still continue the school feeding program overweight the schools which stopped or which provides less than 2 times, at least 1 times school meals per day. So next slide. And also another, despite these positive results found out as a result of research, there was also challenges and gaps identified by this study. And one of the challenges was that schools which launched the school feeding programs also got some equipment, kitchen facilities. They face some difficulties to maintain, to upgrade when it's required. So in this regard, I think that the outdated equipment cannot be further used. And because of this, also the school feeding programs suffered and also facing difficulties to ensure sustainability. And also there is also staff turnover among cooks, among staff which is involved in delivering these hot meals. And therefore, in most cases, for short term, there are some staff people who are not certified or qualified for these jobs are also involved in this. So in this, as you see in this two diagrams, the first diagram shows that the more than half of sampled schools show that they never conducted, maintained their kitchen facilities, and as well as there's also once a year. But as you see, there's a small proportions does a regular maintenance, and there is about twice a year they do this maintenance work. And as you see here, and also you can see there's a proportion of staff which do not have a specialized qualification in this regard, but still they are involved in this in delivering hot meals in these schools. Next. And also another gap which this research found out is that for sustainability, schools and also the stakeholders face some challenges in ensuring financial sustainability. Also, this is also related to the gap that they cannot also link to this local production, so agricultural production. So in this regard, the research also studied the proportion of schools which have their some small handlings in terms of garden, greenhouses, as well as livestock mini farms. As you see, here is also the schools. Half of these schools studied do not have any small handlings which could also supplement school meal program. So I think that this is, in brief, the key findings, which I would like to present, but also the other findings, I think that my colleagues from Mexico will continue.
Thank you, Rakiia. So, следующий, пожалуйста. So this is another factor influencing sustainability, which is state policy, state support of the school feeding program. On the graph, you can see the commitment of the state to support schools, and you can see the group disaggregation. So those who answered from the first and second group schools, those who improved or maintained the same level as in the program, they report 67% or 69% respectively. The state is committed to maintaining and improving the hot meal program. Whereas in comparison, you can see that the group 3, those schools who ceased or decreased their hot meals, they report only 51% for this answer, and the rest are either state pays little attention to hot meals and the quality is falling, and or the state provides hot meals in a minimum amount and does not have the opportunity to improve it. And here is the quote from parents from the same third group, which says that the government does not allocate enough money for school expenses. And for example, they do not provide enough chalk. Parents collected money in fund, and with this money, they bought such necessary things as chalk and rags, which demonstrates the importance of the school state support for school programs. Следующий, пожалуйста. This is about issues which schools faced after the MGD program completion. So the most frequent one mentioned was the reduction in variety of products provided to the schools, which accounted for 32% of answers. This was more commonly mentioned in schools groups in 2 and 3, respectively. Also, often the deterioration of students' diets and reduction in the number of days per week with hot meals were cited as problems, and these also were more frequently noted in school groups 2 and 3. On this slide, you can see the another important factor, which is parents' willingness to co-finance the school feeding. So more than a third of school principals noted that there are problems with co-finance. So parents disagree with the idea or disagree with difficulty, which is 13 and 23% if you see the total responses. And so 31% of principals in group 3, the struggling group, they encounter parents who are unwilling to contribute to the co-payment, while 20% reluctantly agree. Meanwhile, in group 1 and 2, higher proportion note that parents are more willing to make additional payments for hot meals. And here's another citation from the focus group discussion where they see the group 2 and group 3 parents. They say not everyone can afford such payment. And especially this issue is present in rural areas where there are like large families with 3-4 children of the same age who attend primary school simultaneously. So therefore, it's a great burden on the parents' like pockets and budgets, right? Next, the next factor is state procurement. So on the state procurement, 47% of respondents believe that agricultural producers face barriers to participate in the government procurement. So I want to mention that state schools, they procure through state procurement processes, and this is like accounted with some barriers and obstacles for small-scale farmers and others. And another highlight is that 37 responded that agricultural producers and suppliers have to overcome obstacles to participate in the government procurement. And 16% believe that these barriers are insurmountable. So this also was more mentioned in the southern regions such as Osh and Jalabad. The next one resonates the what my colleague Rakiia already said about equipment. Sorry. So based on the school observation, we see that the majority of schools, almost everyone, they are equipped with refrigerator, shelves for dish storage, electric stoves, and work tables. Also, on the contrary, so these were like first top 4 of the items. And on the contrary, 14% of schools lack necessities for school meal preparation, such as electric oven, and more than 50% do not have dishwashing sinks, implying that dishes and food products are being washed in the same place. On the infrastructure overall, principals were more concerned with provision of electricity rather than water and sanitation issues. Whereas cooks, those kitchen workers, they were more concerned with water and sewage issues. The field results also indicate that water supply and sewage system were not adequately maintained and repaired in the timely manner. On this slide, I also want to duplicate the words of my colleague on the kitchen personnel, which is also another important success factor of the sustainability of school program. Here you can see the survey results, which indicate that half of the schools have cooks with professional culinary education. And overall, every second school experiences a need for personnel to work. But most commonly, these are kitchen helpers or like assistant cooks for dishwashing, cleaning, and other needs. Overall, on the date of the study was conducted, about 75% of kitchen staff have been trained in the Mercy Corps program, MGD program, and the use of training materials provided during our trainings really helped them to maintain the school feeding in their schools. Also, on the ease of finding the new staff, about the turnover problem, 29% surveyed reported difficulty in recruiting and hiring qualified workers for school kitchen. And the main difficulty in recruiting lies in low wages. Sadly, this is the insight we gained from the previous program as well, and which led to the program design that during the current program, we motivate school cooks by providing them take-home rations, which are commodity packages, so that it will motivate them to stay at the public school for lower wage. However, that's still something. Next slide, please. And about the results of these studies, the objectives, the strategic objectives proposed. So we have 6 overall. The first one covers the strategic resource utilization. So while government from 7 SOMs to 14 SOMs, there is still need to implement the centralized resource management system to optimize procurement, distribution processes, and ensure that those who are needing the most are getting the support. The second objective covers infrastructure and equipment resilience. So since our 2 programs, donor-led programs, we covered and equipped almost the majority of state schools. However, there are still with equipment periodic breakdowns or some maintenance needs, which require the establishment of the centralized process for timely modernization and maintenance of the equipment and infrastructure at schools. And the third one, Third one is about continuing and expanding training kitchen staff, establishing a continuous process of skills enhancement and ensuring high standards of meal preparation and elevating the status of school cook. Следующий. The fourth objective is about nutritional excellence. So inadequate food quality and lack of nutrition knowledge contributes to formation of underdeveloped dietary habits among students. So we think that emphasizing the importance of providing healthy quality school feeding is the main one. And this is also referenced in the previous study conducted by Mercy Corps and partners, the National Anthropometric Survey on Health. To address this, this study recommends to promote healthy eating at schools, obtain political support in restricting unsafe food near schools and advertisement of it, and integrate educational programs on healthy nutrition in the curriculum. The lack, the fifth one, the trustworthy operations. The lack of transparency and accountability in expenditures for school meals, it poses a distrust from parents, right, who co-finance it, and other members in the local communities. So solutions include implementing transparent financial practices with regular stakeholder monitoring, engaging stakeholders in both oversight and provision of school meals to enhance accountability, and establish a feedback mechanism for the continuous optimization of the process. The sixth one, sorry, the last but not least, this is about local agriculture empowerment. So this includes fostering partnerships between farmers, which will help farmers to apply for school procurement and support training for local producers on this food standards, procurement standards, and ensuring procurement of local food products at the village level. This is my last point. Thank you.
This is the last slide.
Yes,
Yeah.
this is last.
Thank you, Ajar. Thank you, Rakiia, for such tremendous research that you provided. We do understand that the sustainability is one of the crucial thing among this hot meal provision process, and I know that together with the partners and the Ministry of Education doing really high job on this in this direction, and I hope that in future the budget will be more efficient, transparent. We do understand. We would like to see low workflow among cooks and see really healthy nutrition among schools. Next articles, I would like to provide the floor to Izzat Kurmangaliyev. His article on value for money of school feeding program in Kyrgyzstan. Please.
Thanks, Zalkar. Hi, everyone. Yeah, we can move to the next slide. Yep. Oh, I can. Oh, wow, fancy. Yep. Thanks again. Yeah, as Zalkar said, my name is Izzat. I'm the mail manager here for Kyrgyzstan office, and within our ongoing MGD program, we've done a value for money study. So it was done in-house, and we have colleagues at the HQ who made this study. Sadly, they couldn't join, so I'll try to present. Some parts of it I am still struggling, but bear with me. Hopefully we get to enjoy the study, and this is something that as an organization we are trying to do for all our future programs. So yeah, this is something we can move on. Yep, я слышу перевод и думаю, успеваем, нет? Okay, so why value for money, right? Or why are we doing it? As we all know, humanitarian and development needs are growing, right? With the ongoing wars in the region and infrastructure needs that are dwindling, and the fact that the governments have different ways of supporting, especially regional conflict, are affecting everything. But the funding is not what it used to be, let's say, or it's getting down. So this is where we want to understand what's the value of the support that we're providing, right? And there are many evaluations and impact evaluations, as we all know, and this conference is another proof that there are a lot of impact studies that have been done, and we can see their results, but sadly, there is not much evidence how much they cost in practice, the activities that we're trying to implement. And from there, the question is, in the real world, where budgets are limited, which interventions and modalities should we prioritize, right? This is what we're trying to answer with the value for money study that we've done in-house. What does value for money imply, right? So with this study, we are able to get information about the monetary value of resources used to deliver services. So basically, we're trying to find out, as our program is designed to feed children, how much do we spend on meals and how much do we spend on feeding a child? And we want to link our program performance with its review, right? So what we're doing, we want to include it into our review. And basically, as a as a concept, what does value for money mean? It refers to an optimal way to expend resources to achieve intended outcomes. Basically, this means the best way to use resources to get the results we want. And analytically, for this value for money, it also includes combination of cost analysis, which include cost economy, cost efficiency, cost effectiveness analysis, and additional analytical components for the study. Okay. Okay, I think we got up. Yeah, so a little bit about our program, and I think this was skipped from the previous study. Previous study emphasized results of the previous iterations of the MGD program, and here's something for the ongoing program, right? So it's still McGovern-Dole Food for Education and Child Nutrition program. It was launched in 2021. It will end in 2026. It's funded by USDA, US Department of Agriculture. Our goal is to reach about 100,000 kids from the primary schools in 400 schools that are remotely located or mountainous. So we only work in schools that are outside or difficult reach. Our objective is to improve water and food security and nutritional outcomes for children of primary grades. And we do have hybrid support. So some commodities are imported, which is 5 commodities that we get from US, and kefir we procure locally. So that's a combined format. And for the purposes of this study alone, we used only first cohort school for the first year of support. So technically we support schools for 2 years, and this study only covers first year and first cohort. So it's 124 schools, 25,000 children, and not all schools started hot meal at the same time, right? So because of the infrastructural needs that they have to prepare, not all schools start hot meal on the 1st of September. Some started later on, some started in the middle. So the number of days that we are counting is different for all schools participating. Yeah, and then the metrics that we used are cost to deliver a meal, cost to serve a child per year, and cost per in-kind contribution, which is basically what we're getting from you. I think we can move. Yeah. From this, it does, but it doesn't appear. Okay, so basically what I want to emphasize in this slide is the cost to serve a child for a year of school programming within the first cohort of our program, right? So it costs us to feed a child per year around $133, of which $43.92 were in-kind contribution, or basically the costs of the commodities themselves. Another $40, we have direct costs that are basically to run this program, to deliver those products, to do the custom clearance, to deliver it in country, to set up the school kitchen and all that. And another $48 is the indirect cost. So basically these are shared costs that we have for office rent, for admin staff salaries that are not directly involved only in this project and everything. And at the graph at the bottom, you can see this is basically a breakdown within our activities and how they align, right? So I would focus on that value of in-kind contribution, the yellow one, which says activity A8B, right? So that's the commodities price. So that's the $44 that we mentioned. Then there's distribution costs and then the procurement of local commodities. So for example, given that we only give one local commodity, which is kefir, it's only taking a small portion of our amount, right? And then like take home rations that we provide are basically not adding a lot of value to our costs. So it's a good thing. We can cut costs somewhere. The next slide is, okay, cost results and metrics, right? So the findings are some of the findings. So for $1 value for distribution, basically I will read the slide. The cost to deliver $1 if in-kind contribution was $1.14. Only commodities important from US, right? So this, we're only talking about 5 commodities that are coming from US. We're not talking about kefir. Every $1 invested in the program, of 53 cents were used for Mercy Corps implementation, and 47 cents of them were the transfer to the participants. So basically, we're almost at a half and half division in our implementation. the cost to deliver a meal to the school is at $2.28, which is considered a little high, right? So a meal costing that much is a little bit high. But the explanation we have there is that, again, not all of the schools started at the 1st September. Almost half of the schools started hot meals in November, December, and so on. So they didn't get the full year of school feeding. They only got a part of it. But even with that intervention, we already see some improvement, right? So we measure our success through conducting early grade reading assessment. And it's done at the baseline, at the midline of the program, and at the end. And within the year of hot meals at the schools, combined with all the other interventions, all the training that we do, we've seen that at the baseline, 24% of the grade 2 students who ended grade supremacy demonstrated that they can read and understand meaning of the grade level text. And by the end of the school feeding program for this particular school, it was 36%. So there's a high increase of kids who are able to demonstrate that they can read and understand the meaning of the grade level text. So this is something we are very proud of. Then next slide, yeah. So this is some cost benchmarking that we want to emphasize, and sorry, I want to do this. So basically, there's dark blue circle. If you see, that's Kyrgyzstan, where we stand. So this diagram compares different school feeding programs, and I know that all school feeding programs are different, right? So we have to emphasize that not every program supports equally or similarly. So the distribution and the type of support the schools receive are different. However, we can see from this graph is that we are only reaching 25,000 kids, right? So it's less than 100K. And for that, our cost is a little higher. Whereas if like programs in Tajikistan, where they reach 300,000 kids, the cost per meal is getting lower. And this is somewhere that we're trying to aim with increasing the number of the kids that we're covering, by increasing the number of participating schools that we do by cohort. We're hoping that the cost to deliver a meal will go down. And I think this is my last slide. Yep. Yeah. So some of the key takeaways. Our cost efficiency is within reasonable cost range compared to other school feeding programs. So we are happy that we're not going too far. If we don't reach our target of 100,000 kids, or we go lower, the cost per child to feed within a year might go up, right? So right now we're at $133, $34. It might get up to 200. So our goal is still to cover more schools and at least cover all the schools that we're planning to cover. We already see good literacy results, so that's something we're very proud of. By design, our program imports products from the US, right? So we can't fight that, but potentially, if we can orient more on locally produced food instead of important, this might reduce the cost. And we can see it with the kefir already that we already going down. And then the THR take-home rations that we've identified with the sustainability study and the previous result, that the take-home rations that we provide to cooks are a motivational factor for them to stay at the job. And if we continue to provide them, or other programs that are doing the same can incorporate that, it can reduce the turnover of the cook, which could potentially make them stay on the job, improve the school meal programs and all that. And that's it. Thanks. We do have a slide on our contacts. Yeah, I think we're in time, right? Thanks.
Thank you, Izzat. Yeah, I would like to emphasize that according to these agro results, the level of literacy among kids who get the hot meal is more higher than the ordinary school children. It's about 6% or something like that. So it's also really good result of the hot meal program here in Kyrgyzstan. Next word I would like to provide to Ayjan Erishova. She has Rakiia. Okay, Rakiia. On assessing the existing nutritional gaps of school children and the role of school feeding in addressing these issues. Yeah, please.
I think before we move to this topic, we have one small presentation on this kind of which has an informative character. So I think can you? Next. Okay. So we would like to talk briefly about SABER. Sorry. So we are talking about sustainability, and achieving sustainability is very difficult when we have a scarce of resources. And when we have this budget availability issue. So, and also earlier we mentioned about this ensuring financial sustainability for school feeding programs is a major challenge for this. And therefore, I think that my colleague from Mexico, Izzat, also presented very good instrument on cost the value for money calculation, which I think that we have definitely applied this and calculate always. And when we have this situation related to the scarcity of resources, we have to do something. I mean, we are these organizations, partners, as well as this government. And then something is this prioritization. So then to help with this prioritization, our organization, World Food Program, is now conducting another study, a SABER. And then in my few slides, I would like to tell about what is SABER and at which stage we are now, and then what findings we are expecting from this SABER. Because now this research is underway, we haven't conducted yet. Maybe later on when we have findings, we will share. Maybe there's a next year, this conference can be another platform where we can share these findings. So SABER which stands for systematic approach for better education results. This is World Bank tool to developed as a kind of structural methodology to assess this educational system, as well based on this assessment, enhance this educational system in different countries. And then SABER school feeding is one of the component of this global comprehensive SABER tool. And this SABER school feeding is also collaborative effort between World Bank and also World Food Program. And then World Food Program conducts this SABER activity in all its all target countries where they run the school meal program, and once in 5 years. And then last time our country office conducted this in 2019, and then this is a recent one we are conducting now. So in brief, the SABER assesses the status quo of educational system in five areas. As you see, there's a political and the regulatory framework, financial capacity, institutional capacity, as well as program design, implementation, and a community participation. Next. Oops, sorry. So as you see that there is the tool applies a set of indicators for each area. And in the policy regulatory framework, as you see that we assess the availability and also extent to which extent of the implementation of these policy documents, regulations on all relevant laws. And in financial capacity, we measure the availability of budget, and also mechanisms of budget distribution, and also budget transparency. And in institutional capacity and coordination, we the functionality of coordination mechanisms at different levels, at national, subnational, and municipal levels. Also, in this area, the SABER also measures the extent to which these relevant institutions are mandated, and then what are their capacity to implement school feeding programs. And in the program design and implementations, the SABER measures extent about coverage, nutritional quality, as well as these mechanisms to track the effectiveness of this program implementation. And then the last in communities, community involvement. So the level of community involvement is measured. Oops. Okay. So we have about 12 indicators to measure this national capacity to implement the school feeding program, and then to measure to identify values for these indicators. There are about 83 questions which have to be answered through these methods. So then one of the data sources is documents to be reviewed at the desk review stage, which we have already conducted in September with our country office research team, as well as experts on SABER from our regional office. Now, I think that we are finalizing the key informants interviews. As you see, this is a school feeding is also cross-cutting topic, and also involve a lot of stakeholders, especially when we talk about this financial sustainability. There are also a lot of stakeholders, and also to address the gap between this agriculture and also school feeding program. Also, there's stakeholders from this agricultural sectors are also involved, including this agricultural specialists, also the farmers. And then we have conducted about 30 interviews. And then based on this, we are expecting to have workshop in 1 week, next week, in Izzat, and then all these, the representative of all these listed institutions will participate there to validate these preliminary findings, where we, all the stakeholders will find the consensus on these bottlenecks and gaps once again. And also based on this, they will prioritize areas where the most and the immediate investment is required to ensure sustainability of a school meal program. And as a result of workshop, there will be consensus building, but also there's a key deliverables is roadmap or action plan on how to capacitate government in sustaining this school feeding. So I think this is what we are expecting, and then I think maybe next year or through other channels we will share the findings when it's available. So mostly the key findings will be which bottlenecks, which gaps are agreed by different stakeholders to address immediately, and also maybe in the long term, and also which areas should be invested. So this is small presentation we would like to inform as a next step of after last year's studies, what we are doing, where we are moving towards. Yeah, thank you. Now I can, hand over presentation to my colleague. Thank you.
Please, Izzat.
Спасибо большое. Айджан Еришева, специалист по исследованиям ВПП ООН. С вашего разрешения я продолжу на языке презентации. So, dear partners, colleagues, thank you for coming to our sessions. Today we will discuss the existing nutritional gaps among primary school children, and we will discuss how the school feeding programs can address these issues. Можно, пожалуйста? So why we decided to discuss the existing nutritional issues and why we selected this age group. So overall, you know that nowadays the triple burden of malnutrition is one of the main nutrition issues across the world, and Kyrgyzstan is not the exception because it's really important for the low and middle income countries, like in our case in Kyrgyzstan. So plus the existing macroeconomic issues like food crisis, other stressors and shocks, plus extreme weather events can exacerbate the existing burden of the countries to meet these nutritional standards and related SDG goals. So why we selected the primary school children? As you know, usually overall this so-called middle childhood age, like from the 5 to 9 years and early adolescent, usually underlooked by this from the scientific perspective and the policy as well. And you can see even in the Kyrgyzstan from the programs of international organization, international INGOs, like their programs mostly focused on the newborns and infants, while the people of the primary school children are missed of the programs. And from the government side, if you see the health system, you can see that we have the pediatric for the children and therapeutic parts for the adults, and there is no differentiation between the subgroups. While this age, it's really important to fill the gaps in the nutritional deficit and prepare the children for the pre-puberty changes from the psychological and physiological perspective. So from the well-known for us, the NIMA study, we can see the latest anthropometric data that can show the anemia and the associated iron deficiency anemia and deficiencies in A and vitamin D, as well as the COSI study that present the level of obesity and overweight. So as well as the World Obesity Federation also estimated that this obesity between these groups will increase it and reach 11% by 2030. But if we will see the root causes of this malnutrition and deficiencies in nutrients, we can see that it's really related to the first food availability within the country. So it's data from the Ministry of Agriculture. You can see that Kyrgyzstan was for the last year self-sufficient only for milk, vegetable, and potato. So we can also export. While for the rest products, you can see there is the deficit. It's less than 100%. So it means the gaps covered by the importing the products. And especially the situation is not really good for the fruits and berries and vegetable oil. Then another issue related with this nutrient gaps is food access and poverty gap. As you can see, it's the minimum subsistence level. So we have different standards to conduct the poverty and the standards of the living, but here we presented the minimum subsistence level. And if you can see that 65% of the household income, they spend on consumption of the food. Still on the gap, we can see the poverty gap and poverty severity. As you know that poverty, it's a range and it's different. And you can see that in the higher mountains regions, it's the poverty severity is very high. It's the brown ones. Yeah, and actually the WFP country office, when targeting and selecting the schools and all the help and programs, mostly focus it on this targeting design. So if you will see the actual food consumption among the children for the last year, you can see that it's lower of the required standards, physiological standards. It's for the kilocalories for energetic part of the food. And on the next slide, you can see the macronutrients part. Yeah. It's on the proteins and fats. It's also lower than the recommended one. So also in the both of the graphs, you can see the correlation between the poor population and non-poor population. As you can see, the deficiency is higher among the poor households. So what proposed by the school meals, as you know, according to the hot meals and school meals program, we provided the 25% of the daily ration. It's from the 515 kilocalories to 550 kilocalories. And as you can see, we have the decreased coverage of the kilocalories before the pandemic. For the last year, we still didn't reach the pre-pandemic level, but still you can see that majority of the regions reach the standard. So we can see that school feeding can cover 25% of the daily ration. Exceptional for the Batken region and Chuy. That's a little bit less than the recommended standards. This issue is also related with the food affordability. So it means with the cost of the food. As you can see, like for the 2022, in the regions like Batken and Jalalabad, 87% of the population were not able to afford nutrient-rich rations. So we can see that the cost of the ration is highest in Batken. Yes. And the lowest in Issyk-Kul, where you can see around 20% cannot afford the nutrient diet. If you will calculate after the pandemic, the cost of the nutrient adequate diet increased by 34%, and cost of the energy only diet increased by 41%. So it means that it's increased not only for the nutrient rich, but overall for all the commodities for the food. So we have tried to calculate the cost of the diet. It's actually the cost of the food. It doesn't include some utility or cook salaries. So if you will do the menu for the day, it's the most selected school meals for the last years. So, and if you will just calculate the hot meal plus bakery plus drinks, you can see that it's already higher than the cost allotment, even without the utility and other fixed cost. So according to the price bulletin of the National Statistical Committee, we will calculate the actual cost. The minimum for the food, for the hot meal for the school meals is 36 soms. So now we will discuss the climate change and planet-friendly school meals, like why it's not only important to have the diverse and nutritious food, but also to move forward more planet-friendly school meals program. First is menu changes, which can encourage dietary shift to promote planetary and human health. So it means to shifting more fortified staple foods to locally produced foods. The second one, clean energy efficient cooking solutions that can lead to more clean and sustainable cooking solutions. Prevention of food loss and waste and reduction of plastic use. From this sustainability study, we know that 25% of the food is wasted food, and the schools doesn't have any sustainable solution for recycling, for storage, cooling, or reusing their food. And food system education, as you know, it's really important because in Kyrgyzstan, even we don't have the nutritionist position or education, for instance, in the Kyrgyz State Health Academy. There is no this kind of even direction to study and learn about the food systems and generic knowledge on education. So why it's important to address these issues through the schools, because the primary school children, it's around 11% of the total population of the Kyrgyzstan and around 30% of the children within the country. And with the enrollment rate for the last year, it was 94%, then we can cover majority of the people. And since they started the schooling from these years, it can be the good platform for transformation and innovation for the whole food systems. And the last slide is just like food for thought. We have calculated for the previously mentioned most selected menus, the water footprint. So yeah, you can see how much food we spent for growing and transporting the food per serving. So thank you. If you have any questions, you can follow on our corporate sites and study more and deep our studies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ajan. I see the goal for 22 songs that we are expecting is not enough for making more efficient. 36 songs. This is the goal for our government to reach really substantial school meal at school, hot meal at schools. So I would like to thank you all the speakers for your substantial theses and your speeches. So now we can start our Q&A session. Please, if someone, do we have a microphone for the questions? Yeah, yes, please.
Вот я как раз хотела Айджан задать вопрос по поводу ее презентации. Вот до этого у нас была параллельная сессия, и Всемирный банк презентовал свое исследование по потреблению, и они как раз показали абсолютно обратные вашим данные, потому что они оценивали только 40 районов, да, в Кыргызстане. Вы как бы четко не указали, все районы покрыли, по всему Кыргызстану сказали Кыргызстан, да. Они сказали 40 районов, и они указали, что именно в Бишкеке потребление снижается, а в Джалабаде, в Нарыне, в Баткене потребление повышается, да, то есть с вашими цифрами это совсем расходится, хотя они начали в 2021 измерять и по текущую дату, а у вас закончилось это 2022 годом, да, то есть я понимаю, что там оверлапа нету, но в любом случае как бы данные очень различаются. Можете ли вы как-то прокомментировать, почему у вас одни оценки, у них другие?
Если вы имеете в виду по нынешнему потреблению, которое было на уровне страны, оно считается Национальным статистическим комитетом каждый год. И эти данные государственные, то есть официально признаны. Если вы имеете в виду стадию Field and Nutrient Gap, который закончился 2022 годом подсчетом, где мы посчитали последнее, то это является, если Всемирный банк считает на основе потребления, то у нас этот бенчмарк является чисто экономическим, то есть он проектирует стоимость минимального потребления. Не на основе существующего потребления, но на основе имеющихся цен согласно бюллетеням, ценовым бюллетеням. Да, то есть я не совсем поняла, какой презентации, слайду это был вопрос. Сейчас. Давайте я верну, чтобы мы точно знали, что я вам на тот слайд ответила.
Это вот этот региональный разрез как раз.
Региональный, да, то это Field and Nutrient Gap, вы можете почитать у нас на сайте, это чисто экономический, он не считается на основе потребления, он был, цена на рацион была рассчитана как минимальная цена на рацион, это только для, включающая энергетическую ценность, плюс включающаяся более нутриентная, то она считается согласно стандартам.
Спасибо. Следующий вопрос. Я со спины, к сожалению, не вижу. Да, пожалуйста. Может, погромче, да, или чуть поближе, да.
Там еда imported, да, из Америки. У меня мой вопрос. Вы проверяете качество еды?
Да,
Потому что, например, вот это value for money, это иногда, если ты смотришь со стороны денег, да, сколько стоит, чтобы что-то произвести, иногда может добавлять всякие вещи, которые меньше стоят, но качество еды плохая. Поэтому вот это был мой вопрос. Я переживала про это. Что кушают дети?
Спасибо. Еда проверяется, и здесь также есть коллеги с Мерсико, если что, они могут ответить. Но я просто добавлю, что все продукты, которые привозятся к нам, donated commodities, они обогащенные продукты с обогащением витаминов. И здесь при растаможке они все идут на сертификацию. Да. Поэтому, да, продукты проверяются, и мы уже видим изменения в поведении детей, такие как семьи чаще начинают использовать чечевицу в еде, детям это нравится, они просят родителей приготовить. Есть случаи, когда родители обращаются к нам и спрашивают, где можно в Кыргызстане такую же чечевицу купить, потому что ту, что в магазине мы видим, она другая, а дети хотят именно ту, которую привозят. Да, поэтому продукты проходят на проверку качества. То же самое и происходит и с кефиром, который мы здесь закупаем. Это тоже проверяем. Спасибо.
Я хотел бы еще дополнить в этом плане то, что есть определенные требования и санэпидемстанции, которые также учитываются. И хотел бы отметить, что у каждой школы, которую посещает, есть отдельно мониторинговый журнал, куда включается и по качеству, и по каким-то там рекомендациям и так далее. То есть в этом плане работа проводится. Такой же мониторинговый журнал есть не только у Мерсико, но и в школах у WFP есть. И любая организация, то есть даже районо может приехать, отследить, посмотреть меню, насколько он соответствует тем или иным требованиям и так далее. Спасибо. Пожалуйста, следующие вопросы. Да, да, пожалуйста.
Нурзат Эсенгулова, директор программ Мерсико в Кыргызстане. Да, очень хороший вопрос. На самом деле, я хочу просто дополнить, да, коллеги уже сказали, 6 видов продуктов питания предоставляется для школьного питания, да, в программных школах. Это получается 5 импортированных продуктов питания, которые полностью имеют сертификаты качества. С этим они прибывают в Кыргызстан, но мы еще дополнительно через ДГСН все лабораторные данные тоже, да, как бы сдаются, и сертификаты на эти продукты получаются. Но вот здесь я хотела отметить, что они обогащенные, да. До этого коллега сказал уже, это растительное масло, обогащенное витамином А и витамином D. Именно то, что Айджан отметила в своей презентации по НИМАС, там как раз были результаты, что, к сожалению, да, дети школьного возраста, у них недостаточность витамина D и витамина А. А это как раз для роста и развития очень большое влияние оказывает. А также мука и рис, они обогащены железом и фолиевой кислотой. Это тоже очень важно. Почему? Потому что, к сожалению, опять же, по результатам НИМАС определено, что, к сожалению, железа очень мало, да, в организме детей. К сожалению, с пищей поступает мало железа, да, и таким образом, опять же, развитие детей тоже страдает. А так как вы знаете, тоже по результатам НИМАС, к сожалению, в Кыргызстане только 2% муки адекватно обогащается железом. К сожалению, на сегодняшний день. Спасибо большое.
Спасибо, Нурзат. Пожалуйста, еще вопросы? Сзади, да. Я со спины, к сожалению, не вижу. Да, пожалуйста.
My question is for Izzat too. Maybe you mentioned it and I missed it in your presentation. How do you evaluate the impact of school feeding programs on the literacy rates? Is it between the control and treatment schools or before and after analysis of the same group of kids in the same school? And also, what other indicators do you use? Is it like attendance rate or like the family outcomes?
Sure, thanks. That's a great question. We do, and this is a complex program, not a complex program, but a combination of efforts, right? So the design of McGovern-Dole program is that school feeding stimulates the attendance, which helps elevate the hunger, which leads to attentiveness during the class, thus improving the literacy, right? We do train teachers. We do have a literacy component where we distribute books. We promote extracurricular reading. We do deliver training monitoring system where school principals can oversee the quality of teaching. And there's also different practices like positive discipline that we promote for the teachers. When it comes to indicators, there is a huge set. Sadly, this is a USDA design, and there are a lot of indicators, and they do cover enrollment, they do cover attendance, but the measurement of the literacy is done through early grade reading assessment, EGRA, and it's done for a sample number of schools that is done at the baseline, midterm, and an end line. It's the same schools, but the students are the second grade kids who have already been fed at least 2 years, and that's how we measure their literacy skills. And yeah, it's a whole shebang. But sadly, the small issue that we have is that some of the schools are Uzbek taught, right? And we don't do Uzbek EGR. So it's only Kyrgyz language teaching and Russian language teaching.
Thank you.
Я могу дополнить как раз вот о чем говорил Izzat, да, ЭГРА подтверждает результаты. В принципе, воздействие мы можем там увидеть, да. Например, если сравнить результаты ЭГРА, которые проводились 2-3 года назад, да, и сравнить то, что проведено и сделано, вот, например, midterm, да, прошел уже по ЭГРА. И получается, что количество детей, которые читают и понимают, увеличилось, да? Вот таким образом мы можем, в принципе, понять, что все-таки питание очень хорошо влияет на академическую успеваемость детей. Спасибо.
Спасибо. Thank you. You please, yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to come in very briefly. My name is Tilman Brook, and I was involved in the previous impact evaluation. So you asked about, how do we identify the impact on learning, and in complementing what has been said already about how we can measure students' ability to learn and so on. We had a comparison both between treatment and control schools, but also within schools, because we had different years, and there were children who attended school for 1 year before the school meal was introduced. And so in the first year, they wouldn't have had school meals, but then the new generation of children in their first year, they did have school meals. And so we could compare, 2 cohorts of students, so to speak, and see if one cohort would have more learning than the other. So it's just another way of cutting the data and learning more. And so as the school meal program is introduced, it's an opportunity to test how it impacts on children in comparison to the children who went before them. Yeah, just to explain that. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, please.
Yeah, this was very good questions, and I would like to also add from WFP part how these school meals are monitored, as well as how these impacts are measured, and what exactly shows as the impact of these school feeding programs. So in terms of monitoring, we focus during this monitoring, our organization focus more on risks, monitoring of risks, where there's a risk that can be erupted or cannot be sustained. So in terms of evaluation, I mean, the impact evaluation, we do every year annual assessment of school meal component of our overall food security program. And then there were unfortunately, the ultimate beneficiaries, children, cannot attend. Mostly the data are collected from parents, as well as stakeholders from school staff, cooks, directors, as well as teachers. And of course, we also measure changes in the attendance, especially also changes in willingness of children to attend the schools, and then also some changes in their learnings, if they're gaining, if they're showing some successes, but based on these stakeholders' responses. Yeah, this is a small addition from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Rakiia. Please, do you have any questions, additional questions? Yeah, please.
Мне вот интересно, как вы считали cost effectiveness на одного ребенка, то есть на основе каких критериев вы подсчитывали эффективность, и то, что у вас получается, ну, не хватает, да, детей, количество, которое цена на одного ребенка, она дороже, чем в других странах, да, получается? Как вы вот эту проблему решаете?
Да, дополню, что исследование по нашей cost effectiveness в рамках вот текущей программы, оно покрывало только первый год программной интервенции. Получается, в дизайне нашей программы школы, которые участвуют, они должны получать горячее питание с нашей помощью в течение 2 полных учебных годов. К сожалению, школы не успевают сделать свою часть, такую как ремонт, да, какие-то там, выделить, например, помещения, складские помещения, куда мы привозим уже оборудование и продукты. Они не могут предоставить это к 1 сентябрю, и, соответственно, горячее питание начинается в школах в разные сроки. Кто-то начинает с 1 сентября, а кто-то может дотянуть до марта даже, да, кто-то только в марте, и там, получается, у них горячее питание проходит только 2-3 месяца учебного года. Соответственно, в рамках данного вот презентации, которую мы делали, покрывался только 1 год интервенции первой когорты школ. Но в будущем мы будем на каждый год его рассчитывать. После завершения каждого года мы будем считать, сколько в этом году стоило предоставление питания на одного ребенка в течение года. Соответственно, сейчас говорить, что мы хорошо или плохо, нам еще рано, да, мы пока еще в рамках программного бюджета и покрываем те количество таргеты детей, которые мы планировали покрыть в первом году. В первом году мы планировали покрыть 25 тысяч, у нас чуть больше 25 тысяч детей были прокормлены в первый год. В последующем что мы хотим отметить, это то, что если будет цена продолжаться и она пойдет, точнее, количество детей будет уменьшаться или мы не достигнем своих целей, возможно, кормление одного ребенка в течение года вырастет больше. Хотя мы хотим уменьшить. Ну, это economy of scale. Да? Чем больше мы детей кормим, тем меньше мы можем привести цену на горячее питание. Такой факт. Да. Но вот презентация, которую мы делали, она только первый год, 124 школы, и не все начали одновременно горячее питание. Спасибо. Но добавлю, да, вы еще спрашивали, какие косты. Мы брали только те, которые напрямую связаны с процессом горячего питания. Да? У нас есть, например, как вы знаете, отделы, которые занимаются, например, повышением литераси, да, вот это все, что касается грамотности. Расходы, которые уходили на грамотность, не учитывались в рамках горячего питания. Они связаны. Спасибо.
Спасибо. Еще вопросы? Пожалуйста. У нас практически уже 3, да, так что, да, вот можно. Последний вопрос. Да, пожалуйста.
Is there any? Sorry. In the US, milk is fortified with vitamin D. I see that vitamin D deficiency is a problem here. Is there any move afoot to fortify milk in Kyrgyzstan with vitamin D?
Я попробую ответить на этот вопрос, но, честно говоря, да, у нас, как вы уже слышали, да, с мукой, обогащение муки железом у нас даже проблема, да, в республике, поэтому насчет обогащения молока пока мы не слышали, да, что такое происходит. Единственное, да, что могу добавить, мы доставляем в программные школы опять же, продукт молочного производства, кефир, да, но, к сожалению, по молоку я еще не слышала, и я не думаю, что такое есть, к сожалению. В будущем, может, будет, да, будем надеяться. Спасибо.
Спасибо. Dear participants, dear speakers, I would like to thank you for such active participation during our session. I wish you all good luck. Thank you.
All right, let's get started. Welcome to this session on translocality, entrepreneurship, and middle class across Eurasia, Kyrgyzstan's first capitalist since the late Soviet era. That's the official title. And it's a book presentation and discussion. And I would like to introduce the cast to you. First, the main character in this not sure if it's a tragedy or is my very good friend Philipp Schröder, who is currently an associate professor of anthropology at Nazarbayev University in Astana. He's also an adjunct professor of social anthropology at the University of Zurich in Switzerland and a research affiliate of the International Security and Development Center in Berlin, where both Damir and I are also working. Philipp obtained his PhD from the Martin Luther University in Halle-Wittenberg, which is in Germany, for those of you who are not so familiar with the name of the cities. And while he was there, he was also a researcher at the Max Planck Institute of Social Anthropology in Halle, which is quite famous. Since then, he has been a lecturer at Humboldt University in Berlin and at the University of Freiburg. And now he's based here in the region. Philipp does really interesting research. He's my favorite social anthropologist. He does very interdisciplinary research. He does mixed methods. He even does statistics sometimes. We taught him. And he does very policy relevant research, which is fascinating. And he's often engaged and engaged by and engaged with practice organizations and international organizations who ask for his advice. His topics are very far-ranging. He has worked on school meals, on peace building, on youth, on entrepreneurship, on all gender, on all sorts of issues. So, and I find that a strength in this case. And it's a pleasure sometimes to travel with Philipp, and because he'll sort of look out of the window of the taxi or of the train, and he'll say, "Do you see that over there? Interesting, isn't it?" And then he tells you a whole theory of what's happening somewhere, and I didn't even realize it was happening. So it's fascinating. So that's the main character of our show this afternoon. And then we have two additional actors who are contributing to this. On the one hand, there is Azel Mozakulova, who is a senior research fellow at the Mountain Society Research Institute at the University of Central Asia, well known to all of us, the place. And as a researcher, she has traveled a lot. So translocality is something that has also applied to her CV. She has been a visiting researcher at Harvard University, at the University of California at Berkeley, for example. And she, like Philipp, actually has a sort of interdisciplinary approach. She does economics, politics, security, and has traveled between academia and practice and policy, having also worked more or less directly for the Kyrgyz government. I'm not entirely sure how close that was, but to me it seemed close, and to various think tanks. And looking up her profile, she has intriguingly published a book recently called The Power of Apricot. So we'll come back to that. A chapter, okay, a chapter in a book, yeah, but it's in a book, yeah, okay. The Power of Apricot, yeah, I thought it was a lovely title. Made me really think, and we'll come back to that. Last but not least, there is Damir Senaliyev, who is a senior researcher, well known to everybody, the uncle of LiK study, and he works in Berlin at ISDC, as I said, and at IGZ. And previously worked for many years in Kyrgyzstan, also for the government, if I can say that, by the central bank, the national bank, but also for the World Bank, for example, which is where we met. And Damir is interdisciplinary only in an economic sense. He used to work on macro, and he now works on micro. Within economics, that's interdisciplinary, yeah. But like the other panelists, he traverses the world of academia and policy advice, and it's something that I also really like about him. So the setup is that Philipp has published a book, and he will introduce us to the book. And then we have three sets of comments from Adel, from Damir, and from myself. And we will grill Philipp, and to each of these comments, he will have to answer and reply. And then we open the floor and we hear more questions. We have an hour. I really look forward to spending that hour with you. And with that, I would like to invite Philip to present his book to us. He'll have to read very fast to read the whole book to us. So I don't know how he'll manage that, but over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Tilman, for this very nice introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. I selected the cast, as you said, very carefully, right? Because Asel is sitting on my side, yeah, defending me, I hope. Yes, of course. Like in any good plot, you know, it is evil to some extent. And I'm very happy that the two of you agreed. I'm not sure yet what I have gotten myself into, you know, because I'm an anthropologist, yeah, sociocultural anthropologist. And these two are economists, right? So I'm a bit afraid, Martin, you're an economist too. So yeah, don't expect too much of me. I also made it easy for myself because you will not hear a book presentation in the classic sense, you know, that I will talk about the book for 20 minutes or longer. I only have one content slide about the book that just gives you a broad orientation. And my idea was that actually the discussants speak about the book, which is more pleasurable for me because I don't have to do it. And the downside, of course, is, as Tilman said, I have to answer to the unprepared question. It's unscripted. It's not a Kamala Harris or Joe Biden interview. So this will be fun, I hope. So I'm looking forward to that. And I would ask, because I don't have a clicker, if someone can open the slideshow. Oh, there is the clicker. No, I just didn't find it yet. Okay. So let me start by actually rotating the book. Yeah, we're few enough, so you can have a look. You should pass it on quickly because I assume you have read it. So what I will be speaking about is the coming together of translocality, entrepreneurship, and middle class in Kyrgyzstan, with a specific focus on three types of economic actors that are represented in these three pictures. Yeah? Right next to the book title, and I want to also add that I didn't choose the cover, and I didn't choose the colors of the cover. I had no choice in that. Right next to the book cover is the first generation that is represented in the book. It is the classic generation of the bazaar pioneers, the bazaar traders who have started early after the end of the Soviet Union in the 1990s. And in my case, I have followed them to Novosibirsk, which I found interesting, right? Of course, the inspiration for it came from Dordoy in this city and the bazaar that has evolved here into one of the largest marketplaces across the world, at least at one point. It used to be like this. And I have tracked them to Novosibirsk to add also, let's say, an identity category that is about ethnic diaspora, yeah, being abroad as a trader, yeah, and these kind of intersections of culture and economy, because that is usually what an anthropologist is interested in. Now, the picture to the top right represents a second generation. The second generation were Kyrgyz middlemen. So people who were actually facilitating business deals between China, yeah, because they were residing in China. That was a very tiny group. Yeah, I have to also say that the Novosibirsk bazaar traders of Kyrgyz ethnicity were a sizable group, yeah, more than 20,000 people, right? While the Kyrgyz middlemen in Guangzhou in southern China were a very tiny group, and they were a very new group, and hardly anyone knew about them. But they were a relevant group because they facilitated the trades deals between the Chinese manufacturers and all kinds of, let's say, Russian-speaking client across the former post-Soviet space, right? So it's not only from China to Kyrgyzstan, it was to Kazakhstan, to Russia, right? Azerbaijan, and so on. This is the next generation. And the third generation, which is represented here. Some of you must know that. This is the Transtextile factory outside of Bishkek, which represents what I call the new entrepreneurs. And I called them new entrepreneurs because many of them appeared around the time when, in 2015, Kyrgyzstan entered the Eurasian Economic Union, yeah, which changed Kyrgyzstan as a marketplace, which changed how business was made in Kyrgyzstan. And I will speak a little bit about that on the next slide. But these are basically the three main generations, because they were also subsequently following one another, but also the three main groups that I'm speaking about in the book. There. Okay. So in my view, the book makes 5 contributions. The general one is what I just said, is one in economic anthropology, right? And of course, there's a consequence from speaking about economic anthropology, because this means that it's a very small sample size, yeah? You will not have quantification, right? You will have in-depth and complexity rather than representation and causality. So this is kind of setting the stage. And what was interesting for me is how culture intersects with entrepreneurship, and culture in the very broadest sense, right? So culture also meaning identity, categories such as gender, age, yeah, and so on. So this is the general contribution. The first one that I was thinking about is what I just said, right? So I can skip to point number 2. It represents or presents ethnographic data on 3 generations of Kyrgyz entrepreneurs in 3 different sites, right? The 3 sites are important for the second contribution, because what I used as a concept for the book is called translocality. And now some of you might know that there is a term that is called transnationalism, right? Why I prefer translocality over transnationalism is that transnationalism speaks about political borders, right? But not always are political borders the most important thing that you can transgress, right? And that you can be mobile across in a metaphorical or in a physical sense, right? And translocality allows me to capture also a movement such as between a rural place and an urban place within the same country, because technically speaking, that is not transnationalism, right? It can also mean that at one point, maybe a geographic boundary is more important than a national border. Right? It doesn't delimit that national borders play a role, of course they do, but it widens the scope to also look at other maybe social boundaries that play a role, right? And within this setting, translocality allows to look at how mobility, being mobile, the exchange of goods, the exchange of ideas, the exchange of everything that is tangible or intangible, relates to how place is made, right? And placemaking means settling down somewhere, even if temporarily, right? It can be a neighborhood, it can be a city, and so on. And with place, of course, you know, comes a whole different range again of identity making. Yeah, who I am and who am I in the place where I have settled down, right? And so in that sense, I found translocality a good concept to grasp the realities of these 3 economic actors types that I have looked at. In terms of value chains, in terms of their commercial journeys, is a term that I coin in the book. And commercial journeys, I mean, really in a geographic sense, in an economic career-making sense, right? But also in a biographical sense, right? So this is what is coming together when I speak about a commercial journey in the book. And more practically, contribution number 3, 4, and 5, right? Is 3 trends that I have to identified that are associated with the regional economic integration that has been unfolding in Central Asia, along the lines of the Eurasian Economic Union, along the lines of the Belt and Road Initiative, right, and so on. So this regional economic integration has, to some extent, led, according to my respondents in the book, to a return of manufacturing, yeah, which is represented in, for example, a company such as Transtextil, what I showed you on the previous slide, right? It is an upgrade in terms of a value chain position, because before Kyrgyzstan imported ready-made fabric from Uzbekistan. But with the emergence of a company such as Transtextil, Kyrgyzstan moved up in the value chain because it needed only to import the cotton thread from Uzbekistan while having control over the production of fabric in country, right? And this is significant because you can choose quality, you can choose colors, patterns, you know, and so on, right? So this return of manufacturing was important for those who I have been speaking with. And the other thing is what has been referred to by others as a servicification of the value chains, right? And in the beginning, this sounds like a difficult word, but if you compare, for example, the first generation of the bazaar traders in Novosibirsk with the middlemen who have moved to southern China, you can clearly see the servicification, because the original traders, they did everything by themselves. They traveled themselves to China. They agreed with the Chinese manufacturers on site, not being able to speak Mandarin, with the calculator in hand, you know, negotiating prices, yeah, for example. And the middlemen are coming after the traders as a second generation because they are filling this gap and this need in the value chain, because they were already exposed in the 1990s to China's influence in Kyrgyzstan. They understood that China presented an economic opportunity. There were first educational programs that taught young people Mandarin in Kyrgyzstan, or then later traveling to China, right? So there was a different kind of professionalization and servicification, because the middlemen are not traders, they are not manufacturers, yeah, they're service providers, yeah, more or less. So this is one of the things. And the service provider also is important because trade, if we compare it to the early 1990s, yeah, and what has been referred to as a wild capitalism, we can witness a formalization of trade, right? More and more regulations and standards and everything play a role. For example, through the Eurasian Economic Union, a whole level of standardization has been introduced to Kyrgyzstan's economy. I'm not judging it, whether it's good or bad, but it's a fact that formalization plays more of a role than before. Diversification, because a whole new range of actors are appearing in the value chains, such as the middlemen, such as other service providers. Yeah? A Kyrgyz travel agency in Novosibirsk, you know, exclusively organizing the trips, you know, between Novosibirsk and Bishkek, for example. This is all flowing into the servicification. The second thing is, if we compare the wild capitalist times of the 1990s, oftentimes we could notice an antagonism between the public and the private sector, yeah, between politics and economics, right? That there was no cooperation, yeah, that there was a separation between the domains, yeah, and antagonism, even also in the negative sense of, let's say, corruption standing against evading taxes, yeah, and mutual accusations and so on. But alongside the formalization, and especially once Kyrgyzstan was set to enter into the Eurasian Economic Union, the business, the public and the private sector understood that it would be better for Kyrgyzstan's economic development if they started cooperating. And all of a sudden, we had new institutions that were not there before, such as GIA. Yeah, you maybe know Jash Ishkerler Associatsiasi, yeah, the Association of Young Entrepreneurs, which is a lobby organization to some extent, but definitely is facilitating dialogue between the public and the private sphere. Yeah, this is not something that was even thinkable during the 1990s, right? So there is a certain rapprochement between the public and the private sphere. And there is an establishment of the business lobby community, right? If you speak to many original traders in the 1990s, they say, we were lone wolves. We all worked by ourselves. We had to protect our trade secrets, yeah, from one another. And now there is a community spirit, yeah? There is, let's say, through GIA, a mentorship program where established entrepreneurs help younger entrepreneurs. They are joined business excursions to other countries, yeah, where in an organized way, Kyrgyz entrepreneurs learn how entrepreneurship has been unfolding in other settings, right? And the final thing, alongside all of this, I would argue that there is an emergence of an entrepreneurial middle class. Now, middle class is difficult because it's an analytical term, you know, brought in from the outside. But as an anthropologist, I also follow what my respondents are telling me during the research. And this is exactly what they told me. Yeah, when I ask them sometimes, how would you categorize yourself, right? Are you an entrepreneur? Or, you know, what is the consequence of being an entrepreneur? They said, well, we are sredny class, vyšší sredny class. So middle class, upper middle class, right? And there's, of course, the consequence from associating yourself with the middle class, right? It is not status-based, yeah? So you're not receiving any benefits because you were put in a certain position and you are reaping the benefits out of that position. But it is very merit-oriented, that you worked yourself up to become an entrepreneur, yeah? And you basically made your own career, yeah? That's why the commercial journey is an important term for me. And the final thing maybe is to have culture coming in, right? So where is Kyrgyzness in business making? And Kyrgyzness appears in many ways in business making, right? For example, dispute resolution in an organization like GIA, at least at the time of my research, was still done through Aksakal courts. They had a court of elders, you know, that kind of mediated misunderstandings between members. Yeah, there is ethnicity and Kyrgyzness in business making when one close friend of mine opened a nanny service agency, who for an urban middle class offered nanny services and maid services, cleaning services, and then still what appeared is the challenge to be a good daughter-in-law, a good kilin, yeah, and at the same time being able to consume such a service, because sometimes consuming the service of a nanny from the outside was hidden from the mother-in-law, right? Because she shouldn't know that you are making your life easier, right? And so a lot of the consumers actually try to hide that they are consuming such a service. Be loyal, buy local. Yeah, is another slogan that was very important for entrepreneurs, yeah, which also introduces Kyrgyzness, yeah, into this mix. These are the contributions that I think the book makes, and now let's see if you agree or not.
Okay, the plot thickens. Thank you very much, Philip, for introducing the concepts. So as I suggested, I'd like to invite Asil to give your assessment and ask your questions to Philip. Thank you.
Да, спасибо. Я бы хотела заметить, что и вообще начать с того, что данная книга, какой ее вообще вклад в центральноазиатские исследования миграции. Если мы посмотрим на то, как развивались миграционные исследования в Центральной Азии, мы можем видеть, что самый большой нарратив, который и аргумент, да, скажем так, который превалирует в них, это такой экономический детерминизм, да. И мне кажется, что основной вклад этой книги в центральноазиатские исследования миграции в том, что она говорит о миграции из Кыргызстана совершенно новым языком. До этой публикации основной исследовательский интерес был сфокусирован на том, какие, скажем так, выталкивающие факторы являются основными для трудовой миграции из Кыргызстана, какие практики дискриминации они, то есть трудовые мигранты из Кыргызстана и Центральной Азии попадают, да, в стране прибытия. Есть, например, работа Рустама Уренбоева, где он просто вскрывает российскую систему, коррупционную систему, систему подавления и мигрантского контроля через изучение кыргызстанских мигрантов. И что мне понравилось в этой книге, здесь говорится о мигрантах, и здесь их позициональность достаточно, на мой взгляд, насколько это возможно, конечно, все знание субъективно, но вы старались, во всяком случае, представить их голос, не увлекаясь чрезмерной интерпретацией. Мне кажется, вот это очень важно. Я бы хотела обратить внимание, что вот для исследователей, которые находятся в середине своей карьеры, это исследование, вот если прочитать введение, дает очень интересную перспективу так, как мы приходим к капитализации своих знаний. Насколько я поняла, у Филиппа не было какого-то конкретного проекта, под которым он писал эту книгу, то есть это была такая достаточно долгая работа. И когда мы работаем в нашей исследовательской стези, мы очень часто накапливаем большой объем материала, но у нас не хватает, скажем так, какого-то пуша для того, чтобы капитализировать его в книгу. И вот в введении Филипп показывает, мне кажется, это тоже не очень характерно для мужчины-автора, он показывает, с какими лимитами и ограничениями встречался он, и как его биографическая траектория помогла ему в конце концов капитализировать собранные данные в этот научный труд. Поэтому, мне кажется, когда мы смотрим на монографию, как уже, я бы сказала, отмирающий жанр академического производства, к сожалению, да, очень важно тоже смотреть, как исследователи объясняют свой биографический путь к этому труду. Это тоже является, на мой взгляд, ценно, так же, как и те аргументы и выводы, которые сегодня были представлены. Как уже рассказал автор, мы видим совершенно разные траектории, которые удалось задокументировать на протяжении достаточно длинного отрезка времени. И у меня сложились вот следующие вопросы к вам. Вот вы говорите об определенном свойстве, да, кыргызскость, которая формирует предпринимательский этос, да? Но, как мы знаем, любая культура, она не монолитна, очень динамична, спорна, что значит кыргызскость, да? Как вы объясняете расходящиеся культурные нарративы или критику изнутри кыргызского общества, которые могут бросить вызов предпринимательскому этосу? Вот в первой главе вы там говорите про те отголоски советской культурной, даже иногда этническое разделение труда, которые как бы шеймили, да, первых предпринимателей, исходя из вот этой советского представления о том, что торговля – это не есть хороший вид занятий, да? Но есть же еще и другой такой нарратив, мне кажется, он такой чуть-чуть доколониальный, когда был такой очень распространенный миф о тоже этническом распределении труда, когда предпринимательство и кыргызскость, да, не встречались. То есть там животноводство, да, но предпринимательства нет. И как раз вот эта первая волна предпринимателей, она совершенно опрокинула этот миф, и это был такой, я бы сказала, невероятная такая перестройка того, в чем кыргызы могут быть лучшими. Да? И вот мне вот интересно, что вы думаете на этот взгляд? И, возможно, вы думаете, что вот этот неолиберальный сдвиг воспринимается как потеря традиционных ценностей? Возможно, я не знаю. Также, мне кажется, очень важный аспект вашей книги – то, что вы раскрываете гендерные динамики в предпринимательстве, обсуждая роль кыргызских женщин в ранней постсоветской базарной торговле. Вот в своей книге вы подчеркиваете центральную роль женщин в экономическом выживании. Однако, как вы примеряете это с сохраняющимся гендерным неравенством в более широком социально-экономическом контексте Кыргызстана? Может ли фокус на предпринимательских успехах женщин преуменьшить структурные барьеры, с которыми сталкиваются женщины при выходе за рамки мелкой и неформальной торговли? И, пожалуй, наверное, заключительный вопрос будет касаться будущего этого класса. Вы уже в книге затронули, как вхождение Кыргызстана в Евразийский экономический союз сказывается на динамиках трансграничной торговли. Но в целом, как вы видите будущее кыргызского среднего класса предпринимателей, учитывая зависимость многих предпринимателей от внешних рынков России, который сейчас ведет войну, Китая? Насколько вы видите этот класс устойчивым? Насколько, в конце концов, устойчивы эти экономические достижения перед лицом внешних вызовов? Спасибо.
I'll start, yeah? Thank you. These are all great points. Thank you very much. I will just go through them, yeah, the way you mentioned them. So I think it's excellent that you referred, to a changing discourse about migration that goes beyond economic determinism, right? And you have yourself contributed to that. You should have mentioned this. For me, this was the starting point, right? That at the time when I conceptualized the project, which was 2011, 2012, there were already the first publications, for example, by Madeleine Reeves, who told us that we shouldn't only look at migration in terms of push and pull and in terms of economic determinism, right? And so on. And at the same time, my aim was to find something different in a different place, right? Because, I mean, also we should say that the whole narrative about economic determinism in migration came from the sites that we were looking at as anthropologists, political scientists, and so on, right? So if you look into migration towards Western Russia, yes, and Petersburg and Moscow and so on, you will find a particular type of migration, right? And I wanted to find kind of a different migration. I wanted to look in another place to find something else, which is what I did, yeah? So, and for me, it was very important, and I think this translocality is a good notion to use it because it is open. Yeah, it doesn't only speak about migration, it speaks about mobility and placemaking, right? It brings together to be mobile and to be, I don't know, maybe feeling at home, yeah, or maybe not feeling at home, but somehow having a relatedness to a place, in a similar way that oftentimes we speak about networks and we think that they have no localization. But all networks have localizations, right? I mean, there are social ties, and then these ties are placed somewhere, right? And then all of a sudden, geography comes into play, right? So this was a very important starting point for me. You also mentioned the capitalization of knowledge. This is a very good aspect, yeah, because it links to the personal or private journey, yeah, of someone, not only in producing knowledge, but also to speak about the structures that we're all part of in a good or bad way, right? And that we can leverage or are constrained by, yeah, in different ways. In Germany, the academic market, at least in my field of anthropology and the humanities more generally, tells you that you should write a second full book after your PhD in order to become a full professor. Right? So this was the one thing, right? There was a real need, yeah, to write this book. And at the same time, I thought the format fits, because if you look, I don't know, across, I started then research 2013 and I finished probably 2018, right? With fieldwork now and then, someone's here, someone's there. You cannot wrap this kind of research into an article, yeah, or several articles, right? I would have felt that it's an artificial cut, yeah, between each of them. I should have written in one article about each site or about each type of entrepreneurship. So I felt the format also then still, despite the need to do so, fitted into a book, right? So this is maybe something that is important. Now, the more important questions, I think, is Kyrgyzstan and cultural narratives, right? What comes together and what we are challenged by as anthropologists especially is that we have two perspectives on what we call multiple realities, right? We're not looking for one truth, but we say there are multiple representations, yeah? And the one thing is the analytical one that looks at how it is constructed. And the other one is the emic one, the one from the inside, looking at how it is told, right? And then we have to make not a choice, but we have to represent both of them, right? So if, for example, my Kyrgyz trade respondents, participants of my research, say, it was very difficult for me to start trading. Trade is not in my blood, then this is something that is an essentialized identity, and we can very smartly, speak about this in analytical terms, right? And say it's a social construction, there's historical inaccuracy and everything, it's essentialization and so on. But what if this self-understanding has actual real-life consequences? Then our social construction perspective is somehow half-worthy, yeah, of describing what we find, right? And the same also goes the other way around. So in the same way that a lot of Kyrgyz traders of the early generation who had like half a foot of their life in the Soviet era and half a foot, in the other one, said, I was ashamed to trade. Yeah, it took me a very long time, right? Then at the same time, there was kind of, and this is their words. This is not my words, right? We have a nomadic mindset. We are very flexible. We are more flexible than others, right? And that's why we are good traders. That's why we're good middlemen. Yeah, that's why we adjust, to new realities in different ways, right? And my job is to document this, right? Not to say this is true or not true, yeah, but I'm documenting it and I'm giving my analytical commentary on it. But more or less, that is it. I shouldn't go further, yeah, and kind of curate, yeah, or craft one truth here from this. So, I think this is very interesting, and just maybe you allow me to take one very funny example from research, right? So one of my respondents, or two actually of them, who I met 2013 in Novosibirsk, they told me a story about the 1990s, which exactly shows you that. So one of them was someone who was scheduled to start a PhD in biology in 1991 at Tashkent University, which was super prestigious at the time within the Soviet system, right? And then the Soviet Union demised, yeah, and she herself started to become a trader because she thought being a teacher will not be feeding my family, or I cannot make a contribution in the way that I think I should. So she started becoming a trader, but she didn't tell her parents for 2 years. She hid becoming a trader from her own parents for 2 years. And this happened to many others. So, and then this situation in my fieldwork was that two people who were related told me a story about how they saw each other at Almaty airport, but they hid from one another so that the other wouldn't see the other and then tell the whole kinship group about that the one of them is trading and the other not, right? And this is what I mean with the consequence, yeah, of expressing or narrating that you're ashamed. It was a real hidden identity for many people for such a long time, right? Something you avoided, yeah, and you felt to be stigmatized by, right? Gender inequity, well, there was a joke about among Kyrgyz female traders in Novosibirsk, because most of them were female traders, right? So we were once sitting together, and it was 7 of them, and they said, look at her, she's the most successful one. Guess why? And at the time I couldn't make a good guess, and they said, well, evidently she's divorced. She has no one to take care of. Yeah? She's, unleashed, yeah, in her potential to trade and make money and, all these kind of things, right? This is a narrative again, right? But it also speaks a certain truth, right? That even economically, those families where you had labor sharing within trade between a husband and a wife were those who were most successful. Yeah. So for example, the husband, would meet the goods at Novosibirsk railway. He would bring the goods to the bazaar. He would open, the bazaar stall. Yeah. But he would not sell. She would sell, right? She would maybe go to China, pick the goods, before they are transported back. Those families who had a labor sharing agreement, right? They were also those who were most successful, evidently, right? So, this is also, maybe we should say something specific about Kyrgyz migration in comparison to, let's say, migration from Uzbekistan or from Tajikistan, right? That there's a lot of family migration, yeah? There's a certain gender balance in migration, yeah? And that there's not only male migration, yeah? Kind of, or predominantly male. The future of the middle class, I have no idea. I don't know. It's very difficult for me to say. Because looking at the Eurasian Economic Union, and we look at the promises that were made to people in Kyrgyzstan economically, and then the reality that we could see on the ground, right? Being promised that you would be an agriculturally exporting nation within the Eurasian Economic Union, and then seeing that you couldn't get the standardization for a simple product as your eggs, right? And therefore, you couldn't export them to Russia, right? But you had imports from Russia, yeah, of eggs, right? So it is very difficult because Kyrgyzstan still is not in a strong position to negotiate a favorable position, right? In this regional setting, right? So I think a lot depends on that. That would probably be my answer. It's not a good answer, but I have no better one at the point.
Thank you very much, Philip. With that, I hand over to Damir.
Я тоже решил на русском говорить. Филипп, спасибо большое за возможность прочитать книгу. 260 страниц, я не все прочитал, но тем не менее то, что успел, было очень и очень интересно. Я разделю свою речь на 3 части. Первое – мои первые впечатления. Второе – тематические, это про челночную торговлю. И более-менее про вот эти изменения, связанные с вступлением в РАЗЕС. Я назвал это структурной трансформацией или изменением. И третье, 3 вопроса, которые, на мой взгляд, интересно было послушать твое мнение дальше. Ну, начну с того, что Филипп, это Гюевала наш, да? Также у нас был шведский Гюевала, Йохан Энгваль, он писал диссертацию по политическим вопросам, да, про коррупцию. И вот, в общем, делать диссертацию в Кыргызстане немножко наказуемо, с точки зрения, что у них появляются кыргызские жены. Но это наверняка очень хорошо и дает действительно вот погружение в ту реальность, которую они изучают. На мой взгляд, это книга про экономическую историю Кыргызстана. Торговля и миграция – это то, что после Советского Союза были, так скажем, выбором для человека, который, так скажем, работу потерял. Да? И в этом плане то, что описывает Филипп, в Новосибирске, как наши мигранты делают торговлю, как в Гуанчжоу уже более продвинутая миграция, уже как сервис, да, провайдеры, и уже в стране, как вот эта индустрия, сервис, услуги уже формализуется, так скажем, становится на ноги, да, вот она. И в этом плане, я думаю, симптоматично, что с нами сидит Эмиль Умиталиев. Это тоже история страны, предприниматель, который давал, так скажем, мотивацию и стимул делать больше, чем торговлю в этой стране. Меня интересовала больше всего 3-я часть работы, поскольку она концентрируется на бизнесе, который делается в стране. Мне повезло посетить эти предприятия, которые описывает Филипп. Это был и Транстекстиль в Токмаке, это была и бумажная фабрика здесь, это была и пицца-фабрика. В общем, с этой точки зрения мне очень было интересно видеть, что есть изменения. Может быть, их не так много, но они видны и они качественны. Переходя к первой теме про челночную торговлю, я работал в Нацбанке, занимался статистикой платежного баланса, да, и челночная торговля всегда была, так скажем, проблемной статьей, поскольку никто ее не мог оценить, ну никак. Тот факт, что зеркальная статистика с Китаем была в 10 раз выше по импорту, это все отражалось на ошибках и пропусках, и Нацбанку было трудно объяснить, что происходит, когда текущий счет в дефиците, а обменный курс никакому давлению не подвергается. В этом плане, конечно, ответ был очень там, что торговля, она на самом деле очень большая. И в этом плане, как бы моя первая такая реакция, что челночная торговля, она, конечно, играла огромную роль, именно экономическая, она не полностью видна была, и мы, скорее всего, никогда не узнаем ее объема. Второй момент, что каждый человек в этой стране, наверное, как-то был связан с этой челночной торговлей. В этом зале сидит моя сестра. Я помню, где-то в 4 курсе мама и она решили поехать в челночек в Россию. Я помню, как мы поехали в Сухулук покупать абрикосы. Эта мама решила, что надо купить еще пасту, макароны. Мы утром их грузили на железнодорожном вокзале. Тяжелые вот эти сумки. Мне было очень-очень печально, потому что это была неизвестность, это было риски. И мужчины оставались, и вот мама с сумкой уехали. Они попробовали пару раз, вроде без убытков, как они сказали, и на этом дело было прекращено. В этом плане читать книгу и вот видеть, как вот этот процесс проходил, что на самом деле, кого мы видим на поверхности, успешных, людей, которые развили, их немного. Вот тех, кто попробовал и, можно сказать, не получилось, их очень много. Этих героев мы не видим. Это, наверное, моя вторая тема. И одна вещь, которая меня настолько поразила, мы думаем, что торговля – это очень конкурентная среда. Там есть пара моментов, когда Филипп описывает, что, так скажем, нишевой продукт, если он находится и пользуется спросом, я не могу его привести. Потому что есть компании, которые уже монопольное положение заняли, они есть дистрибьюторы. Я не могу привести, потому что это дорого и так далее. И тогда ты понимаешь, что торговля, она, хотя и кажется очень конкурентной, на самом деле она для некоторых категорий товаров не очень. И это связано с политикой. Для меня это было, хотя и знал некоторым открытием, который узнал благодаря Филиппу. Вторая тема моя, так называемая структурная трансформация. Филипп делал свою работу во время дискуссии про вступление Кыргызстана в Евразес. И когда мы тоже навещали эти предприятия, там очевидно было, что предприятия готовятся. То есть они пытаются эти стандарты качества, сертификации, вопросы, санитарные меры приводить. Я помню наш визит в Джалабаде или в Аше, эту компанию, которая консервы производит, фрукты, овощи, переработка. Там очевидно было, что они вот инвестируют вот это, чтобы товары можно было легче экспортировать. И в этой теме для меня было открытием насчет инноваций. Будь то в торговле или производстве, как-то женщина постоянно была в поиске, какой товар, какое платье можно будет продавать. Она была супер успешна, часть из-за того, что она была вот очень активна, да, то есть это та героиня, которая за счет того, что вот именно индивидуальность ее характер позволили, так скажем, успешно торговать, затем, так скажем, обогатить себя, превратиться в высший средний класс. Таким образом, так скажем, ты видишь, что это и, так скажем, проактивность, и открытость, и риски, которые люди берут, которые являются рецептом для того, чтобы в этой жизни состояться. Переходя к вопросам последней части, долго не буду говорить, но вот, в общем, те ожидания, которые перед Евразесом были в Кыргызстане. По ощущениям, торговля с Китаем, которую предрекали будет падать, она вроде и не прекратилась, а даже с учетом событий в Европе еще увеличилась. И в этом плане, как бы мы так и не поняли, может быть, какой был более-менее эффект. Возможно, здесь сидящие лучше знают, может быть, вы добавитесь. Но в целом, Филипп, как твои ощущения, если у тебя еще есть контакт с этими компаниями, насколько те ожидания, которые у них были, оправдались и, может быть, какова ситуация? Второй вопрос у меня был, насколько кыргызский случай является показательным или таким же, как в других странах Центральной Азии. То есть, я не знаю, Казахстан может быть самый близкий с точки зрения свободы рынка, но насколько мы можем говорить, что такие же вещи происходили в других странах? И одна маленькая деталь. Вначале где-то ты пишешь про шоковую терапию, что люди двинулись с сел в города. Ну вот, насколько я понимаю, когда земельная реформа произошла, приватизация земли, на самом деле много горожан, в заводах работал и так далее, хотя бы формально двинулись в села. То есть насколько вот этот фактор был, я имею в виду вот это уточнение, я хотел уточнить, то есть книга пишется, что люди уже двинулись из сел в города, но мне казалось, был период, когда на самом деле обратное тоже имело место. А так, как экономист скажу, очень тяжело было первые страницы читать, потому что это очень сложный английский красивый язык. Я примерно каждое третье слово не понимал, но когда уже переходишь к сути, где он описывает все эти полевые свои исследования, это очень-очень интересное чтение. Я бы мечтал, что такая книга была переведена и доступна для исследователей здесь. Сколько это говорит о нас, о многом, о том, что здесь происходило, и очень интересное чтение. Филипп, спасибо большое за работу, и надеюсь, это было чуть-чуть полезно, мои reflections. Спасибо.
Thank you, Damir. I was just warned by Tilman that I should answer in less than 5 minutes, so I will do that. I will be selective, yeah, with answering your questions, Damir, if you allow me. So the one thing that I wanted to highlight is that what often doesn't emerge in publications about trade is the trial and error element, right? So, for example, what you told also about your family story, right? And the failure, right? And this is also, and it's just what I wanted to highlight, is also a methodological challenge, right? Because if you're doing field work, how would you find as respondents for your research those who have failed in trade? You would basically have to ask anyone if they used to be trading at one point and then why, you know, it didn't work out for them, right? So this is a methodological challenge, right? To not only find and document success of those who survived, yeah, and forget about those who didn't survive. Yeah? So this is not an easy thing. This is the one thing I wanted to say. With the monopolization, yes, it has a political component. For me, that was secondary. I probably would want to look at that, you know, in the future. But for me, what was really interesting is to which extent it is an effort and a process to reach the source of a certain product and how much you have to work for it. And then somehow you would even understand that once you found the source, you will do a lot to protect it, you know, from others. And there is one part in the book where I actually followed someone to find the source of a certain product in China, trial and error, you know, I don't know, weeks until we uncovered that. So this is something else I wanted to highlight. The other questions are difficult for me to answer, to be honest. Expectations fulfilled, never. Entrepreneurs are never satisfied, so they have to move to the future, right? And what I still like is that usually there is a perspective that rather looks at opportunity than at obstacles, right? So embracing competition, you know, and finding a solution and so on is something that I cherished among the respondents that I had. Maybe just one glimpse into what is going on today. Barely anyone of the original traders in Novosibirsk is still in Novosibirsk. Barely anyone who used to be a middleman in China is still in China. They all have returned to Kyrgyzstan and are doing very different things. Yeah, so there is an end line, so to say, to this kind of commercial journey, right? And I'll stop here before Tilman.
No worry, but thank you very much. Your very last comment, it's interesting because in the economic entrepreneurship debate, there is a differentiation between entrepreneurship out of necessity and entrepreneurship out of opportunity. And it almost makes me wonder whether some of that move into entrepreneurship was out of necessity, which is what Damir said earlier as well. If it was out of opportunity seeking, which is what you also highlighted, they liked and expressed, then maybe they would have stuck with it longer. But maybe they're still entrepreneurs, but just in a slightly different mode or slightly. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. It's getting on. So I want to very quickly give my impression on what the book is about and then ask you some questions, and we will not have time to answer them. Yeah. But maybe it's interesting. And then maybe we can also have a couple of comments from the audience. So I really liked what your book describes about the shift from the informal to the formal, but also from the sort of unusual to the more standardized, and how basically profits like shrink, you know, because if things are more usual, then, and to an economist, that's beautiful. Perfect competition, you know, should bring down the profit margin, and we just do normal activity. And, you know, the normal profit margin is nothing, you know, that's fair, but it's not abnormal. It's not, yeah. So that's fits very well with my ideology. Yeah. So secondly, I thought it was interesting how you emphasize locality in the process of globalization, because it's almost like a paradox. In economics, we talk about globalization and then we forget about locality, because that's exactly the point of globalization, that if I can source my toothpaste from anywhere in the world, locality doesn't matter. because in 48 hours, DHL will have brought it to my factory and it doesn't matter where it was produced. Yeah, so we economists, we abolish locality and you highlight it. So, you know, I like that. That was nice. The third observation I had was that you're very micro, right? And now you're even telling me your panel because you know what these people are doing today, you know? So beautiful. Yeah, life in and beyond Kyrgyzstan. Yeah, it fits the conference topic very well. But looking at individuals and I also remember you telling me over the years, you know, from your research and the women in Novosibirsk. I mean, in the back of my mind, that's a terminology which I've known for years, way before you started writing this book. And so to see how that has translated then over time into a growth of a middle class, which wasn't apparent, I think, when you started out, you know. So that's interesting, and it shows how entrepreneurship, but also the changing times, that they're contributing to almost like a form of structural adjustment, yeah, like a structural change at least, yeah. So how economic structures are changing, and how that has to do with expectations or stigma or norms, or, you know, fascinating. I really thought that was fascinating. So those were my observations. Now my quick questions, whether or not we end up answering them, is we visited some of those companies together at some point on a study tour we did here in the country, and I remember at the time visiting some manufacturing where I thought this is what we call import substitution. You know, there's a tariff on a finished product. So you bring the raw materials into the country, you process them in the country, and then you sell the product in the country. And that's nice, but you're basically adjusting to the norms and the tariffs. Toilet paper. We remember we visited a toilet paper factory and there was a lower tariff on the raw paper than on the toilet paper. So it made sense to bring the raw paper into country, then to make toilet paper out of it and sell it to consumers. But it's not the same as selling to the world economy, right? So, I mean, this toilet paper was not competitive by world markets, yeah? So anyway, to what extent is the manufacturing you observe import substitution? My second thing is you talk about Kyrgyzness. And as an economist, you know, when we talk about culture, I get very uncomfortable and out of, you know, the fish is out of the water. And I sometimes wonder, as an economist, is when we talk about culture, is that things we don't understand and then we give it a label? Or is it something genuine? Because, you know, I mean, we're all like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, you know, we all have 2 ears, 1 nose, you know, I mean, we're all very similar. Yeah. So is there really something Kyrgyz? And as an economist, I'm always suspicious. And you gave some answers in your earlier presentation, but I wrote the question before you gave the talk. So thirdly, and Asel, you mentioned it, you raised it, the gender issues. Yeah. So at the beginning, many of your examples include women, and you said, in fact, there's predominantly women in Novosibirsk. Yeah. The later pictures didn't show women. Yeah. So what happened? You know, is there a regression? Yeah. Is there a re-traditionalization or whatever? It's not a real term, but you know, what happened to the gender norms? And my final question is concerning natural resources and the environment. It doesn't feature that much, I think. So what do you think about the power of apricots? And with that, over to you.
I thought I shouldn't answer.
Well, really, but exhaustive. Maybe take some.
Okay.
If you have a minute or two to something.
Yes. I like what you said in the very beginning between necessity and opportunity economies, right, or entrepreneurship. Clearly, the early post-Soviet traders were a necessity economy, necessity entrepreneurship, right, which is also captured by this very nice term, accidental traders, which is not coined by me, by Jeff Zahedi, or a colleague of mine, right? So this is clearly something. The second, opportunity economy switches in later. With the professionalization, with having, you know, studied to become this or that economic type, right? So this is, I think, something very interesting. The other thing about the import subsidies, I think it very much depends on the product, right? Because for the paper factory, not only toilet, but all the other papers, you need the raw material coming in from Russia, right? While other traders or entrepreneurs in the book, they import raw material and they export it to larger markets. Yeah, so fabric from Turkey becomes a jacket and goes to Kazakhstan, right? So it very much depends on the kind, right? And the gender and the types, you're very right, but this is also probably the snapshot moment when you're looking at a certain entrepreneurial type, right? So in Guangzhou, you only had middlemen because usually still these were people at an age where they were the first arrivals in China. They studied in Urumqi, they slowly made their way to Guangzhou, right? And usually the first movers were the male migrants, you know, in that regard at least, right? So it was too early maybe to find middle women. That is just the limitation, so to say, of the book, right? I'll stop here.
Thank you very much. Are there any relatively short questions from the audience? It'd be lovely to hear your views. Yes, please.
Предложу версию, не очень смело, но мне кажется, можно рассмотреть некоторые вопросы не как причины, а как следствие, и даже версию того, что то, что мы представляли как традиционным, ломалось очень быстро при принятии политических решений. Я приведу только два примера, которые, на мой взгляд, являются принципиально, фундаментально значимыми в процессе всего того, что произошло вот с базарами, с рынками, с миграцией, с торговлей и так далее. И с превосходством кыргызской торговли среди всех соседей. Первое – это freedom of movement, свобода передвижения. Кыргызская республика первой отменяла разрешение КГБ на выезд своих граждан. Это дало конкурентное преимущество. А соседи держались за эти разрешения долгие годы, а для некоторых категорий они до сих пор не разрешают свободный выезд. И люди и то, что люди дорожат. Да? И второе – это монополизация приграничной торговли, монополизация границ, таможня. У соседей порою границы были закрыты для всего населения и открыты только для одной Гульнор, например, на протяжении многих лет. И эти ошибки наша республика тоже в последние годы повторяет, потому что появились свои собственные монополисты, которые только для своего кластера разрешают проход товаров через границу. И таким образом вся страна, все население теряет свое конкурентное преимущество. Но на заре, тот период, о котором мы больше говорим, в начале 90-х годов, именно Кыргызская республика по разным причинам, не всегда благим, но все-таки демонополизировала границу, особенно с Китаем, да, и с другими странами. И первое – свободное передвижение собственных граждан без разрешения спецслужб. Второе коррупция, но все-таки она была хаотичная и демонополизированная для товаров, пересекающих границы. Это дало стартовые конкурентные преимущества. И мысль, которая возникает вследствие этого, найдутся ли исследователи или захотят ли провести корреляцию между главными политическими решениями в регионе у отдельных стран и с тем, как развивались события даже в массовом порядке и слом некоторых представлений о традициях. И мы упоминаем чаще всего про приватизацию и либерализацию, но очень часто забывается самый важный, фундаментальный фактор – это свобода передвижения. Хотя, на мой взгляд, она является фундаментальным, корневым для всех остальных процессов.
Thank you. That's a great insight. I appreciate it. We do need to move soon to the keynote speech, so I'm hesitating to end the debate. But would you like to make a final reply or comment? You're allowed. You should.
Well, I want to thank you for the comment. It's very important, right? And I think it basically also answered Damir's question, right? How can we compare the Kyrgyz case, to, let's say, the case of Uzbekistan, right? So freedom of movement, monopolization of trade, liberalization, and so on. This was a choice that was made very early for Kyrgyzstan, and for many was a lifesaver. Yeah.
Okay, we have one very final comment or question. Yeah.
Thank you, Philip. So I just quickly saw the book, and just two questions. What was your first inspiration to start such kind of research? And second, why the pictures here are black and white?
Well, the first inspiration, evidently for everyone in Kyrgyzstan, is Dordoy, right? You come here, Dordoy. So you come here, you look what is going on, and at that time there already has been research on Dordoy, right? So I wanted to look at something else where Kyrgyz traders are involved, right? So it led me outside of Kyrgyzstan. That's the one. Black and white. This is a decision made by the publisher, not by me. I can't. Believe me, I would have made many different style decisions about this book. So sorry, but that's the simple answer.
Okay, thank you very much. With that, I'd like to end the session. Thank you all for your interest. I really enjoyed it. It was very insightful, and I invite you to join us for the keynote speech now. Thank you.